Chapter 1664. The Suicide Valley had become a world of ice and snow. Other than a small number of people, everyone else was sealed in ice and snow. Everything was silent, and everyone's eyes were either trembling in fear or shock. Even their breathing had slowed down, afraid that they would trigger Hao Tianwang's anger. From the beginning of the battle, he had been trembling as he hid on the Kunpeng. He did not dare to show himself, nor did he dare to rashly participate in this battle. Looking at such a great battle, he suddenly realized how weak he was. He would usually show off in the righteous path, but now he did not even dare to breathe loudly. Looking at those frozen people from afar, they were still in their charging posture, but they would probably bid farewell to this world soon. He was very glad that he and his father had made the right choice and made the right bet. Otherwise, those frozen people would have ended up like them, and it might be even worse. He ran out timidly and cheered, "Your Majesty is mighty, Your Majesty is mighty." The others also reacted and cheered loudly, "Your Majesty is mighty." King Wuling took a deep look at his father and could not help but sweat. The gap between him and his father was too big. He could not even completely defeat Xiao Bai. If not for his father, the sky might have really changed. King Wuling suppressed the hundreds of thoughts in his heart and also raised his arms and shouted, "Your Majesty is mighty." The Suicide Valley turned into a sea of cheers. Hao Tianwang looked at his subordinates and could not help but feel a little proud. The sky was his territory, and this was the fate of anyone who dared to resist or question him. His gaze swept past the frozen people one by one. It was like the most beautiful artwork in the world, pleasing to the eye. Of course, this was for Hao Tianwang. At this moment, he had a feeling that although he had stolen the sky for so many years, at this moment, he was the true master of this world. All the hidden dangers had been removed. Suddenly, his gaze shifted to a huge block of ice, and his pupils could not help but shrink. This block of ice was the one that sealed Tang Zheng in the beginning. Because it was too big and too thick, there was no way to see what was inside the ice. However, the shock on Hao Tianwang's face gradually turned serious. Everyone's eyes followed his and focused on the huge block of ice. Tang Zheng was sealed in a huge ice block, but he was not like the others who were unable to move. He activated his power and used his divine ability to preserve the last bit of space for himself, allowing him to move freely. However, he had no way of leaving this place. Even when the hidden profound sword hacked at the ice, it could not shake it much. Furthermore, every time he hacked off a part of the ice would immediately condense again. This repeated over and over again. The speed at which the ice was condensing always surpassed the speed at which he was destroying it, making him unable to completely break through. In the end, he simply stopped and stared blankly at the ice cubes around him. His heart seemed to have fallen into an ice cave and gradually turned cold. The ice block blocked his vision and even his divine sense, so he had no way of knowing what was happening in the outside world. However, he didn't need to think to know that the situation outside was definitely not optimistic. Without him, the leader of the dragons, the others were even less of a match for Hao Tianwang. What should I do? Tang Zheng was burning with anxiety. He secretly warned himself that he could not sit still and wait for death. Thus, he racked his brains to think of a way to break through. He stared at the ice block with a burning gaze and muttered to himself, "All things reinforce and restrain each other. When soldiers arrive, they will block them. When water comes, the earth will block it. If I want to break this ice block of yours, I'll use fire." He focused and held his breath. He activated his power and stretched out his finger. A dot of light gradually flickered on his fingertip. However, in the next second, the dot of light disappeared as if it had never appeared. It completely disappeared without a trace. Tang Zheng was shocked. He did not expect this to happen at all. Under this ice seal, even fire can't burn? Mutual reinforcement and restrain. This is the power of ice restraining fire, so there's no way to ignite fire. Xiao Bai's imperial family are experts who specialize in using fire. If Hao Tianwang wants to deal with the imperial family, he naturally has to find a way to restrain fire. In other words, this ice seal technique can restrain fire. That's why Hao Tianwang is so unrestrained. He must have considered the so-called mutual reinforcement and restrain problem long ago. When he thought of this, Tang Zheng's heart could not help but sink. However, he was not defeated by the cruel reality. Instead, his fighting spirit was aroused. Mutual reinforcement and restrain? Why can't my heavenly fire restrain your ice block? He calmed his heart and frantically activated his power. Waves of true chi flowed in his meridians. There seemed to be flames jumping in his eyes. A blazing aura gathered from his entire body to his fingertip. As if lightning flashed, a ball of light flickered on his fingertip. This light was even more intense than the previous one. It flickered a few times, but the light did not extinguish like before. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. He thought to himself that there was a way. He hurriedly activated his power. Immediately, the light on his fingertip shone brighter and brighter. Boom! The flame appeared and kept flickering on his fingertip. It gradually stabilized and became more and more vigorous. It soared into the sky and occupied this small space. Voila! The ice block melted and slowly flowed like a stream. Soon the space became like a pool. The space became bigger and bigger, constantly expanding outwards. The layer of ice became thinner and thinner, and the red light of the flame gradually penetrated the layer of ice. From the outside, the eye-catching red could be vaguely seen. Hao Tianwang happened to see this scene, which was why he had such a big reaction. Immediately he understood that things had changed. Moreover, he could clearly feel a blazing aura from the layer of ice. This was a terrifying blazing aura that he had never felt before. Even the late emperor could not do this. His heart was in turmoil. His face suddenly darkened and he took action. I'd like to see what other tricks you have. Hao Tianwang once again used the art of ice sealing. Terrifying cold air surged out and shrouded the layer of ice in an instant. New layers of ice condensed. The others also realized that the situation had changed. They looked at the scene with shining eyes and felt relieved. With Hao Tianwang's attack, the other party would definitely not be able to jump up again. The layer of ice quickly thickened, and the flame was covered again. It gradually disappeared from everyone's sight. Everyone immediately heaved a sigh of relief. However, Hao Tianwang's expression did not become relaxed. Instead, it became unprecedentedly serious. Could there be another unforeseen event? Everyone looked at Hao Tianwang's expression and their hearts skipped a beat. They stared at the layer of ice and instantly widened their eyes. They could not believe what they had seen. The flame appeared again and it became more and more dazzling. It was like the sun in the sky, quickly penetrating the layer of ice. Boom! With a loud sound, the ice block exploded. It soared into the sky and turned into countless fragments. However, it immediately melted into water and fell from the sky like a heavy downpour. To read a novel, please visit Chapter 1665. A ball of flames soared into the sky, and the scorching heat enveloped this space as if a sun was right in front of them. Hao Tianwang and the others were shocked, staring straight at the tall figure that walked out from behind this ball of flame. You're not dead yet. Hao Tianwang stared at him with a burning gaze. Of course I'm not dead. Tang Zheng's voice came from behind the flames. His voice was not loud, but it was like a sudden clap of thunder, causing everyone's heartstrings to tremble. Tang Zheng walked straight out of the flames, but the blazing flames could not hurt him at all, as if he and the flames were one. Tang Zheng stood in the air and behind him was a ball of blazing flames. It really was like a scorching sun was radiating light and heat behind him. This scene was too shocking, so much so that everyone could not move their eyes away. Additionally, the surging heat wave swept away the previous coldness. Although the air was scorching hot as if it was going to burn, the hearts of these people gradually became cold, as if pieces of ice were placed on their hearts. Hao Tianwang's expression also became complicated, and even interesting. His previously calm expression had long since disappeared. He was very clear about the power of his ice-sealing technique, and firmly believed that this mystical power had already surpassed that of the imperial family in the past. Thus he was confident and fearless. He even arrogantly thought that there was no person in the world, or rather no flame, that could restrain his mystical power. However, reality was cruel. When the bloody reality was displayed in front of his eyes, he even had time to come back to his senses for a moment. To Hao Tianwang this was something that was practically impossible. Tang Zheng looked around and his gaze turned cold. He immediately discovered the other people who had been sealed in ice, and his expression was dark. Although he had long expected this scene, when he truly saw it, the fury in his heart still seemed to be about to erupt. Hao Tianwang, you're really ruthless. Tang Zheng gritted his teeth. These people's cultivation bases were not as high as his, so he didn't know if they were dead or alive. Therefore he couldn't waste any time. He flicked his 5 fingers, and balls of flame flew out from the huge flame behind him and landed on the ice. Seeing this, how could Hao Tianwang just sit back and watch? He roared, "How dare you be so rash!" He casually waved his hand, and a surge of cold air chased after it. However, the heavenly fire was not afraid of the cold air at all. Instead, when the cold air approached, it was immediately burned away by the heavenly fire. When the heavenly fire landed on the ice, it immediately melted. Voila! Water dripped from the ice cubes like a waterfall, continuously dripping from the air. Hao Qianwang's heart trembled as he asked with an ashen face, "What kind of flame is this?" This was a type of flame that he had never seen before. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't figure out why this flame was so powerful. It had been proven that the heavenly fire had a restraining effect on Hao Qianwang's ice-sealing art. Tang Jing was very glad. If it wasn't for the heavenly fire, he would really be in danger. Tang Jing looked deeply at Hao Tianwang and said indifferently, "The heavenly fire." Hao Tianwang frowned. He had never heard of this kind of flame, so he felt that it was unusually unfamiliar. He asked, "What kind of flame is the heavenly fire?" Tang Jing also knew that the heavenly fire was his own creation. It had fused many elements and was a product of coincidence. It was unique in the great wide world. Even if he told Hao Tianwang openly, he would definitely be confused. As expected, Hao Qianwang's reaction was as Tang Jing had expected. Tang Jing could not help but feel a little proud. He smiled and said, "I created it myself. How does it feel?" "You created it yourself?" Hao Qianwang's heart skipped a beat. He found it hard to believe this reality. After all, Tang Jing was only at the 7th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm, yet he could create such a heaven-defying heavenly fire that could easily restrain him. How could he not be surprised? The heavenly fire was so powerful that it had melted most of the ice on the other people's bodies. Hao Tianwang saw this and was anxious. The others looked at each other. For a moment they did not know what to do. "Heavenly fire, do you think you can save them with this?" Wishful thinking. Hao Tianwang flew into a rage and snorted disdainfully. A wave of cold air erupted from his body, and ice swords appeared beside him. In an instant, thousands of ice swords appeared around him. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The ice swords flew toward those people at lightning speed. Tang Jing turned pale with fright and roared, "Don't even think about succeeding." Boom. The flames behind him rose into the air and chased after those ice swords. The sky seemed to be burning, and a blazing aura enveloped the ice swords. The ice swords instantly turned into steam. "Roar!" Hao Tianwang roared deafeningly, "You're courting death." Whoosh. He ignored those people and attacked Tang Jing directly. A bone-piercing chill instantly enveloped Tang Jing. The heavenly fire surrounded Tang Jing like a barrier shield, protecting him. Hao Tianwang ignored the threat of the flames and slapped his palm. A pair of flesh hands, seemingly without any ice, actually slapped directly into the flames. There was a crackling sound, but the pair of flesh palms still passed through the flames intact and hit Tang Jing. Tang Jing wanted to resist, but found that he had been firmly locked and could not dodge. This was beyond Tang Jing's expectations. He did not expect that under the threat of the heavenly fire, Hao Tianwang could launch such a terrifying counterattack. Hao Tianwang was indeed unfathomable. Although he had the heavenly fire, it was unrealistic to rely on this move to suppress Hao Tianwang. Bang! The palms slapped fiercely on Tang Jing's body. At the last moment, he could only mobilize all the power in his body and do his best to build a defense. After a muffled sound, this defense immediately collapsed. Before Tang Jing could react, a vast and terrifying power swept over like a tide, like a huge wave that was about to hit him to the bottom of the sea. He spat out a mouthful of blood. The terrifying power was about to destroy his body and tear him into pieces. Tang Jing. A cry of alarm rang out. Then one after another, cries of alarm rang out. They all shouted, "Tang Jing." It turned out that those who had been sealed had already regained their freedom, but when they saw Tang Jing in danger at first glance, their hearts almost jumped out of their throats. Hearing these cries of alarm, Hao Tianwang knew very well what had happened, but he did not care. The most important thing now was to eliminate Tang Jing. As long as he was dead, there would be no threat of the heavenly fire, and the others were not worth mentioning. Therefore he had to concentrate all his strength to kill Tang Jing. Tang Jing felt that his body was about to be torn apart, but he did not accept his fate. He gritted his teeth and looked at Hao Tianwang, who was close at hand. He stretched out his trembling hand and growled, "Sky-swallowing technique." His palm was aimed at Hao Tianwang. Before Hao Tianwang could understand what was going on, a huge and irresistible attractive force suddenly erupted and completely enveloped him. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1666. The sky-swallowing skill was unleashed, and it was a terrifying sky-swallowing skill. Heavenly King Hao was a man who knew what was good for him. He immediately understood the predicament he was facing. His face tightened and he could not wait to ask, "What are you doing?" Tang Jing did not answer because he had no time to be distracted and did not have the energy to answer his question. A black light flashed and a black hole appeared in front of Hao Tianwang out of thin air. The terrifying power that could devour everything made Hao Tianwang want to dodge. In the past, no matter what threat or attack he faced, he could charge forward and meet it head-on. However, he could not do it this time. The terrifying pressure and psychological trauma caused by the black hole made him a little breathless. Roar! Heavenly King Hao let out a roar. Thick ice walls appeared in front of him, blocking the black hole and his line of sight like the walls of a fortress. It seemed that this was the only way his heart could calm down slightly. However, boom. After an explosion, things did not go as planned. The ice walls collapsed, and Hao Tianwang was completely exposed to the black hole again. Moreover, he was getting closer to the black hole step by step. Although he tried his best to resist and retreat, the terrifying power completely enveloped him. It seemed that it would not stop until it reached its goal. He immediately remembered the sky-devouring technique that Tang Jing had shouted. He was shocked and said, "Can this divine ability really devour the sky?" He was equivalent to the sky of this sky beyond heaven. If the black hole could devour him, did that not mean that it could really devour the sky? If Tang Jing knew what he was thinking, he would definitely scoff. The power of the sky-devouring technique was more than that. If it could only devour him, it would not be called the sky-devouring technique. Hao Tianwang was flustered and Tang Jing was much more relaxed. Their positions were reversed, and Hao Tianwang was facing greater danger. How could Hao Tianwang sit still and wait for death? He stretched out his hand, and a force of attraction grabbed a few of his subordinates. They did not have the strength to resist at all and fell into Hao Tianwang's hands. "Ah, Your Majesty, what are you doing?" These people lost their heads out of fear, shouting and screaming. Hao Tianwang snorted coldly and said, "It's time for you to show your sincerity." All of them were scared out of their wits. How could they not understand Hao Tianwang's intentions? This method of expressing loyalty was too cruel. It was actually throwing away their own lives. However, not many people were willing and they all began to scream. This was a stark contrast to the fearless actions of the shamans and the others previously. It was obvious who was better. This was like a slap that fiercely struck Hao Tianwang's face, causing him to lose a great deal of face. He was furious and his killing intent surged, so he didn't feel the slightest bit of pity. Whoosh, whoosh. One by one his subordinates streaked through the air, and then they all flew into the black hole. This was Hao Tianwang taking the initiative to divert the trouble, letting his subordinates become cannon fodder to attract the sky-devouring technique. Then he would take the opportunity to escape the attack of the sky-devouring technique. Hao Tianwang's wishful thinking was very good. He used the lives of others in exchange for his own life. Even if these people were his subordinates, he did not feel the slightest bit of pressure. As long as he could ensure his own safety, that was the most important thing. One by one, the cannon fodder was swallowed by the black hole, turning into wisps of pure energy and being sucked into the heaven realm. It was precisely because of this change that Hao Tianwang finally found a chance to get lucky. He desperately activated his power and struggled to escape the attraction of the sky-devouring technique. Hao Tianwang's eyes lit up. With a whoosh, he flew far away and hid on the other side of the Kunpeng, far away from Tang Jing. He had experienced the power of the sky-devouring technique once, and he did not want to try it a second time. Just now, he had been careless and suffered from the sky-devouring technique. This time he believed that he would definitely not be so easily defeated. His judgment was very correct. After the sky-devouring technique swallowed the cannon fodder, when Tang Jing aimed at Hao Tianwang again, he was far away, and there were other people and the incomparably huge Kunpeng in the middle. It was not so easy for him to lock onto Hao Tianwang. Tang Jing's head sank. He could not help but feel a little disappointed and regretful. He did not succeed in taking down Hao Tianwang in one fell swoop. It would be difficult for him to have such an opportunity again. However, he was not discouraged. After all, he had walked through the gates of hell. At the last moment, he was forced to use the sky-devouring technique to resist and successfully escape. This had already achieved his goal. The black hole floated in front of Tang Jing and aimed in the direction of Hao Tianwang. It was like a terrifying killing machine, causing Hao Tianwang to be cautious. The other subordinates scattered like birds and beasts, not daring to approach Tang Jing. They wanted to stay as far away from the black hole as possible. Tang Jing did not use the sky-devouring technique with all his might. The black hole remained stable and the attraction force decreased sharply. This was because once he used the highest level of the sky-devouring technique, not only would Hao Tianwang's people be sucked in, even the shamans and the others would not be able to escape. The sky-devouring technique was an indiscriminate attack, and was a true killing weapon. Unless he had no other choice, he did not want to use the sky-devouring technique. Pairs of eyes stared at Tang Jing in shock. Seeing that he did not take any further action, they could not help but mutter in their hearts. Hao Tianwang seemed to be rough and ruthless, but in reality he was very meticulous. Gradually he discovered some clues and his heart lit up. He deliberately probed, "Your so-called sky-devouring technique is only SOSO. You want to trap me? Dream on." Tang Jing did not expect that Hao Tianwang would still have such blind confidence in the face of reality. He said, "Hao Tianwang, be careful of your tongue when you talk big. Since you are not afraid of my sky-devouring technique, why are you running? In fact, you even killed your own people." Hao Tianwang's expression did not change, but the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. He said, "Humph, I was just testing its power. Now it seems that it's only SOSO. If you really have so much confidence in this so-called sky-devouring technique, why don't you continue to use it? Since you have such a request, I will fulfill your wish." Tang Jing deliberately took a step forward, and the black hole also moved forward. The others were so scared that they all retreated. Hao Tianwang's legs also trembled slightly as if he wanted to retreat, but in the end he held himself back. His pupils constricted as he stared at Tang Jing. Suddenly Hao Tianwang noticed that Tang Jing's gaze swept past the witch race and the others, and a hesitant expression appeared on his face. Immediately Hao Tianwang seemed to be deep in thought. He suddenly came to a realization and laughed loudly, "Ha, I understand. Your sky-devouring technique is only SOSO. So you are afraid that others will be sucked in as well." He finally understood why Tang Jing did not chase after him. It was because the power of the sky-devouring technique was too great, but it had a shortcoming, and that was that it attacked indiscriminately. Once it was truly used, other than Tang Jing, who would not be sucked into the black hole, the others would not be able to escape. Hao Tianwang seemed to have discovered a new continent and was extremely excited. Since that was the case, there was no need to be so afraid of the sky-devouring technique. Because, with others around, Tang Jing would not be able to use it so recklessly, and he would have an opportunity to take advantage of it. "You're destined to be a loser if you're too soft-hearted," Hao Tianwang sneered. In an instant he regained his momentum and shot forward like a rainbow. Was Tang Jing soft-hearted? Of course not. He would not kill his own people. He was not as cruel and despicable as Hao Tianwang. Chapter 1667. Hao Tianwang saw through Tang Jing's shortcoming, and his morale quickly rose. He puffed out his chest, and as if he was elated, he stared at the group of people who had been unsealed and ordered his subordinates with a livid face, "Charge up and get rid of them all." As long as the battle between the two sides fell into chaos and came into contact with each other, Tang Jing would not dare to rashly use the sky-swallowing technique to avoid accidentally injuring his own people. Hao Tianwang grasped this point and immediately came up with a countermeasure. The others also came to a sudden realization, and their previous fear was replaced with eagerness. If he didn't want to be sucked away by the terrifying black hole, then he had to engage in a fierce battle with his opponent. That way his chances of survival would be greater. After Hao Tianwang gave the order, none of them disobeyed it. Instead they rushed towards their opponents with murderous intent. Tang Jing secretly thought that it was cunning. He could not protect everyone, but he would not sit still and wait for death. With a swoosh, the hidden profound sword flew straight into the enemy. Buff, buff. Streams of blood splashed out, and many enemies fell under the hidden profound sword. However, their attacks were limited, and it was impossible for them to defeat all the enemies with one strike. Many of them had already rushed to the front of the sorcerer tribe. The battlefield fell into chaos again. The sorcerer tribe and the others had been sealed and escaped from death. They had been affected quite a bit and their fighting power had been greatly reduced. Facing the aggressive and numerous enemies, they were no longer as brave as before. Many of them had fallen in front of the enemies. Tian Chanzi fought and retreated at the same time. His heart was burning with anxiety. His strength was one of the best among the group, but when facing the enemy he felt powerless, let alone the others. The situation was not optimistic. Tang Jing also saw this and shouted anxiously, "Hao Tianwang, you want to use this method to make me hesitate to shoot the rat for fear of breaking the vases. You're really wishful thinking. If you want to be a coward, then I'll see how long you can hide." Whoosh. Tang Jing looked at Hao Tianwang from afar. His figure flashed and he attacked him aggressively. After witnessing the power of the sky-swallowing technique, Hao Tianwang didn't dare to approach Tang Jing again, lest he be struck by the sky-swallowing technique again. Whether or not he would be so lucky next time was still unknown. Therefore he hurriedly retreated, not giving Tang Jing a chance to get close to him. He also deliberately hid behind the crowd, so that it would not be easy for Tang Jing to lock onto him. Treacherous. Tang Jing gnashed his teeth in hatred, but there was nothing he could do. The destructive power of the sky-swallowing technique was too great, and it attacked indiscriminately. It was easy to accidentally injure one's own people. Roar. Tang Jing faced the sky and let out a long roar. It sounded like the roar of a dragon. There was an indescribable aura about it. Hao Qianwang's pupils constricted as he heard the profound meaning behind this howl. Tang Jing's body burst out with a golden light, and golden scales gradually grew on his body. It was as if he was wearing a golden battle suit. Whoosh! He turned into a beam of golden light and flew towards Heavenly King Hao. His speed was extremely fast and he did not use the hidden sword at all. The others also avoided him in fear, especially because of the terrifying dragon might emanating from his body, which made people respect him. Hao Qianwang's eyes flashed with a strange color. He said in surprise, "You are related to the Dragon Clan?" Hao Tianwang was not familiar with the Dragon Clan, but he knew that it was a very powerful clan. When he saw Tang Jing's identity, he couldn't help but be shocked, and his face became serious. Seeing Tang Jing flying toward him, Hao Tianwang quickly retreated behind the Kunpeng and let out a strange howl. Tang Jing, who was flying at high speed, saw darkness in front of him, as if a wall had appeared in front of him without warning. He had to stop, but it was still too late. He hit the wall heavily. Boom. Amidst the earth-shattering sound, Tang Jing was bounced back, as if he had encountered an extremely elastic obstacle. All of the force was bounced back onto his body. This power was too great, no less than the weight of Mount Tai. All the bones in his body creaked loudly as if they were about to fall apart. One had to know that his chaotic Vajra spell had already been cultivated to the indestructible realm. His bones were even harder than steel, but they were still on the verge of falling apart. This is all my power. Tang Jing quickly reacted, his eyes wide open as he stared at the wall-like obstacle in front of him. This was actually the Kunpeng. From the very beginning, the Kunpeng had not made any movements at all. Who would have thought that its strength would be so strong that it could completely counterattack Tang Jing's attack? Just this point alone, Tang Jing did not know who else could do this, and it was so effortless. He looked at the Kunpeng in shock and gradually saw some clues. The Kunpeng's entire body swelled up like air bags. No wonder it could reflect his attacks. He was a little uncertain about the Kunpeng's strength, and for a moment he did not dare to advance rashly. Hao Tianwang hid behind the Kunpeng, fearless, and laughed sinisterly. "I want you to watch them all die. This feeling must be very special. You can slowly experience it." Tang Jing's heart trembled. He suddenly turned his head to look at the others. The battle was getting more and more intense. It had already reached the climax. There were casualties on both sides. Most of them were covered in wounds. They were in a sorry state. But without a doubt, the ones who had the advantage were Hao Tianwang's subordinates. Not only did they have the advantage in numbers, they also had the advantage in cultivation, forcing the Witch clan and the others to retreat step by step. The others also caught a glimpse of Tang Jing's encounter, especially the scene of the Kunpeng making a move, which made them turn pale with fright. The Kunpeng only gently raised a part of its body, like a natural barrier that could not be broken through, causing Tang Jing's attack to disappear without a trace. What kind of sacred art was this? It actually had such divine power. When the Red Lunar Beast and the Patriarch saw this scene, they were greatly shocked. The Patriarch turned pale with fright and shouted, "Be careful of the Kunpeng, its sacred art is to give you a taste of your own medicine." Giving you a taste of your own medicine. Everyone immediately understood the mystery. They could not help but be greatly shocked. There was actually such a sacred art in the world. The Kunpeng did not have the ability to directly attack, but it had the ability to reflect all attacks. No matter how fierce the enemy's attack was, it could completely reflect it back and it would not be hurt. The Patriarch and the Red Lunar Beast looked at the Kunpeng with a complicated expression. It was thought-provoking. The two of them gritted their teeth. The Patriarch said hatefully, "Hao Tianwang, back then you only spared the Kunpeng's life. I don't know why the Kunpeng was bewitched. It actually submitted to you. This is a betrayal to the royal family." It turned out that the Kunpeng was actually an ancient creature. It was even older than the Patriarch and the Red Lunar Beast. In the history of the royal family, the Kunpeng had always been with them. Furthermore, the Kunpeng had an extremely long lifespan. This Kunpeng had accompanied countless of the royal family. It could be said that it had witnessed the rise and fall of the royal family. He really did not know why the Kunpeng would submit to Hao Tianwang. Chapter 1668. Heavenly King Hao had mixed feelings when he heard the words of the patriarch and the red lunar beast. He looked at the Kuan Peng with a thoughtful expression. Why didn't Hao Tianwang kill the Kuan Peng? Why did he spare its life even though he knew that it was related to the royal family? Was Hao Tianwang really merciful? Of course not. Did the Kuan Peng submit to Hao Tianwang? That was not the case either. The Kuan Peng was a unique existence. That was the conclusion that Hao Tianwang came up with after pondering for a long time. He had always wanted to study the Kuan Peng thoroughly but had not gained much. The Kuan Peng had witnessed the rise and fall of the royal family. Furthermore, the Kuan Peng was a symbol of the royal family for a long time. As for the origin of the Kuan Peng, no one knew about it. At least, from Hao Tianwang's experience and information, no one knew about it, not even the royal family. This was very thought-provoking. Hao Tianwang wanted to study the Kuan Peng thoroughly, so he spared its life. In fact, he had no choice but to spare the Kuan Peng's life. The Kuan Peng could not take the initiative to attack, but it could reflect all attacks. Hence, there was no way to kill the Kuan Peng. What kind of magical existence was it? Even if one hated it and wanted to kill it immediately, one could only stare at it helplessly. Hao Tianwang had been troubled and helpless before, but in the end, he accepted the reality. Of course, it was also because the Kuan Peng could not take the initiative to attack and could not threaten Hao Tianwang that he gave up on it. As time passed, the Kuan Peng seemed to have merged with Hao Tianwang. The Kuan Peng was willing to cooperate with him. For example, it could be used as a transportation tool. For example, it even turned into a shield to protect Hao Tianwang after Hao Tianwang ordered it to do so. The patriarch and the red lunar beast knew some of the Kuan Peng's characteristics. After saying those words in exasperation, they immediately realized that Hao Tianwang did not spare the Kuan Peng's life on purpose. He could not kill the Kuan Peng at all. But there was one thing that they couldn't wrap their heads around. Why would the rock listen to this traitor, Hao Tianwang? Hao Tianwang suppressed the complicated thoughts in his heart and sneered, "A wise man submits to circumstances. Kuan Peng is a smart creature. How can you stubborn guys be compared with it?" The patriarch and the red lunar beast were even angrier. Tang Zheng stared at the Kuan Peng intensely as if he wanted to see through it. In the end, he had no choice but to give up. However, he understood something in his heart. No wonder Xiao Bai's mother only described the Kuan Peng to others after she went to the human world. The Kuan Peng was indeed very magical, even more so than the ancestor and the red moon beast. The Kuan Peng blocked the attack for Hao Tianwang. Tang Zheng was curious whether the Kuan Peng could block the attack of the sky-swallowing technique. After all, the attack of the sky-swallowing technique was different from other attacks. Hao Tianwang proudly hid behind Kuan Peng and loudly commanded, "Everyone listen to my order. Kill these guys." Brr, 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 brr. Everyone seemed to be very excited. With the increase in their combat power, the witches and the others were in a more difficult situation. Tang Zheng was very anxious. Looking at the battlefield in full swing, a deep sense of helplessness shrouded his heart. The patriarch gradually lost hope. His side did not have a chance to win, but they definitely could not be wiped out. Moreover, the emperor's life was uncertain. In a hurry, he said, "Tang Zheng, quickly go to the Flower Fruit Mountain to save the emperor. Leave this place. We can't all die here." The patriarch was prepared to sacrifice himself, but he did not completely give up. Even if he had to give up his life, he had to save some people, especially the emperor. He believed that the emperor would not die so easily, because the emperor was a member of the royal family. The emperor had his own mission. Tang Zheng moved his head and lowered his head to look at the Flower Fruit Mountain. The smoke that filled the air had dissipated, and he could vaguely see the scenery on the Flower Fruit Mountain. Suddenly, Tang Zheng's pupils constricted. He seemed to have discovered something unusual, and his expression changed greatly. The others were struggling to deal with the enemy, but only Hao Tianwang noticed Tang Zheng's strange expression. His heart trembled and he followed Tang Zheng's gaze. When his gaze fell on the Flower Fruit Mountain, he could not help but reveal a suspicious expression. Hao Tianwang did not notice anything strange. Then why was Tang Zheng's reaction so big? What did he see? Hao Tianwang muttered in his heart, but he did not know what to do. He only saw that Tang Zheng's brows were tightly knitted together, and he was extremely solemn. Tang Zheng's gaze was firmly fixed on a point on the Flower Fruit Mountain, a point that was very deep in his memory. The Flower Fruit Mountain was already in a mess. The stream had stopped flowing, but there was one thing that was not damaged, the mysterious stone that stood at the edge of the stream. This stone was a heaven and earth Xian stone, and there was no way to store it in Sumeru heaven. The hidden Xian sword did not leave a single mark on it. The stone was so mysterious, so it was natural that it was not damaged. But why was Tang Jing so shocked? Because this stone had actually grown taller and not just a little bit. Hao Tianwang did not pay attention to this stone at first, so naturally he did not notice its changes. What happened to the stone? Tang Jing was puzzled. In addition, Xiao Bai's figure was also nowhere to be found. Although he did not know what was going on, Tang Jing decided to go down and find out. Thus, his figure flashed, and like a meteor from outer space, he flew towards the stone. Seeing this, Hao Tianwang did not know what was going on, but he still followed his intuition and shouted, "Stop!" How could Tang Jing stop? Instead he sped up. Just as he was about to reach the stone, suddenly, a ray of light shot out from the stone. The entire stone was enveloped in light. Tang Jing was stunned. He did not understand why the stone had changed again. Hao Tianwang's eyes were cold. Obviously he was deeply shocked by the light. Suddenly in the next second Hao Tianwang's eyes widened. Boom! An earth-shattering sound rang out, shaking the mountains and shaking the earth. A powerful shockwave soared into the sky, and all the people who were still fighting in the air were completely affected by this shockwave. They were sent flying in all directions and they were all in a mess, battered and exhausted. No matter how strong or weak one's cultivation was, no one was spared. Even Tang Jing and Hao Tianwang were the same. Both of them flew towards the stone. As they were the closest to the stone, they naturally suffered the most from the shockwave. Fortunately, both of them had the highest cultivation. Otherwise, the shockwave alone would have been enough to take their lives and cut them into pieces. Tang Jing was sent flying like a kite. This was even more painful than when he was attacked by the Kunpeng. His bones were creaking non-stop and he was really on the verge of collapsing. He glanced at Hao Tianwang, who was not far away. Hao Tianwang's face was pale, and his situation was not much different from his. Chapter 1669. The mountain of flowers and fruit had changed greatly, it had been razed to the ground, and even the rock had disappeared without a trace. Tang Jing suddenly realized that the huge explosion was caused by the rock, but how could the rock explode? After all, that was a heaven and earth black stone that even the mysterious concealed sword could not leave behind the slightest trace. Hao Tianwang's attention also shifted to the mountain of flowers and fruit, and only now did he finally see some clues. The towering rock had disappeared. Before this, his attention was not on the rock at all, but after comparing it before and after, he keenly found some clues. Could it be that the explosion was caused by that rock? The others were rushed in all directions and did not have the time to care about themselves. They were not like Tang Jing and Hao Tianwang, who had the time to notice the changes in the mountain of flowers and fruit. The two of them were deeply attracted by the abnormality of the mountain of flowers and fruit. Suddenly, the two pairs of eyes narrowed as they saw the same thing at the same time. This thing was covered under the rubble. It was a tail that was raised high up in the air, and the surrounding rocks were all knocked over, gradually revealing the original appearance of the rock. Tang Jing stared at it without blinking, a trace of curiosity and anticipation appearing on his face. Hao Tianwang's expression was very ugly. Bang! With a loud sound, the rubble flew up, shocking Hao Tianwang to the point that his heartstrings trembled. The rubble flew, and a figure soared into the air from the ground. The rubble surrounded him, and with a sweep of his tail, the rubble flew in all directions like arrows that were as fast as thunder. A light screen immediately lit up in front of Tang Jing and Hao Tianwang, and the rubble fiercely hit the light screen, producing a series of muffled sounds. Tang Jing opened his eyes wide, staring straight ahead. After the rubble flew away, he finally saw the figure clearly. It was actually a completely unfamiliar figure, and it was actually a monkey. This. Tang Jing was stunned. He did not understand what was going on. He thought it was Xiao Bai, but now it seemed that it was not him at all. Where did this monkey come from? Just as Tang Jing was feeling bewildered, Hao Tianwang's eyes were filled with disbelief. He exclaimed in shock, "Stone monkey, so the legend is true." Tang Jing's ears twitched and he immediately locked onto Hao Tianwang. He hurriedly asked, "Stone monkey? What legend?" Hao Tianwang's face was pale as he stammered. For a moment he couldn't say anything. "Ha ha ha, the royal ancestors are protecting us. The legend is actually true." Suddenly the ancestors' wild laughter rang out, full of joy. Many pairs of eyes were focused on the patriarch ancestor and Hao Tianwang. Even King Wuling and the Red Moon Beast did not understand what was going on. In the ancient times, there was a legend in the realm beyond heaven. The ancestor of the royal family was born from a divine stone, and he turned into a stone monkey when he was exposed to the wind. Later on, he comprehended the 72 transformation techniques and cultivated a supreme divine ability, thus unifying the realm beyond heaven and becoming the royal family, the ancestor said excitedly, unable to hide the waves in his heart. Tang Zheng was shocked. There was actually such a legend in the royal family, but he had never heard Xiao Bai or the Red Moon Beast mention it. The Red Moon Beast was also dumbfounded. He quickly asked, "Why don't I know about it? Other than the late Emperor and Empress, only I and this traitor know about it." The ancestor sighed. Back then, the ancestor and Hao Tianwang were the guardians. They knew many secrets that others did not know about, and this legend about the royal family was one of them. Everyone immediately understood. They stared at the stone monkey. Tang Jing hesitated and said, "Is he Xiao Bai?" The ancestor nodded and Hao Tianwang was silent. Although he did not know what kind of opportunity caused all of this to happen, this stone monkey was undoubtedly Xiao Bai. It was just his transformation. Xiao Bai. After getting a definite answer, Tang Zheng could not wait and shouted loudly, "Master!" The stone monkey jumped onto Tang Zheng's shoulder and hugged his head, just like in the past, intimately. Tang Zheng smiled dejectedly. The word master and the familiar action showed that the stone monkey was Xiao Bai. He gently touched its smooth fur and asked, "Xiao Bai, what is going on?" Xiao Bai laughed mischievously, "Master, all of this is a coincidence. The four symbols, me and that mischievous rock are the ones that caused all of this." Tang Jing looked at him curiously. The others also pricked up their ears. Even Hao Tianwang temporarily stopped his attack and stared at Xiao Bai with complicated eyes. He wanted to understand the mystery behind all of this. Xiao Bai talked non-stop. "I fell on Flower Fruit Mountain and was covered in injuries. My blood dyed the ground red, and it also flowed onto the mischievous rock. After that, the four symbols landed on the mountain, as if they were a key that quietly triggered this switch. I merged with the mischievous rock, and my injuries were also healed in a short time. Finally, he broke out of the rock." So that was how it was. Everyone suddenly realized that this was truly a coincidence. The mischievous rock, Xiao Bai and the four symbols were all indispensable. Without any one of them, it would not have been possible to achieve all of this. Xiao Bai looked at Hao Tianwang in ridicule and said, "If it wasn't for a traitor like you who schemed to kill us, we wouldn't have discovered this secret." Shua. Everyone looked at Hao Tianwang in unison. It was really as Xiao Bai had said. Hao Tianwang was the center of attention, and he was so regretful that his intestines turned green. What was wrong with him? He had to come to this suicide valley to encircle and annihilate this group of people. If he went to other places, there would definitely be no such thing. Wasn't this just shooting himself in the foot? It was so painful. When the ancestor heard this, he felt that he had vented his anger and said, "Your Majesty, this is the spirit of the imperial family's ancestors. They are protecting your Majesty." This traitor thought that victory was in his hands, but he didn't know that he was completely wrong. Now that your Majesty has many divine abilities and 72 transformations, this traitor is no longer your match. Xiao Bai's heart skipped a beat, but there was no reaction on his face. Instead, he walked step by step towards Hao Tianwang. Hao Tianwang's expression changed. He anxiously pushed his hands forward and stopped him. "Stop, you are not allowed to move forward." Xiao Bai turned a deaf ear to him and sneered, "Hao Tianwang, didn't you want to kill me? I'm standing right in front of you, let's see how you can kill me." Every time Xiao Bai took a step forward, Hao Tianwang would take a big step back. This scene caused the others to tremble in fear and their eyelids to twitch. Hao Tianwang's subordinates were all dejected and ashamed. Their king was actually so cowardly, they wished they could find a hole to hide in. However, they were even more perturbed. With such an unforeseen event, the scales of victory and defeat had already tilted. On the contrary, the patriarch and the others were elated. They swept away their previous depression and cheered for him. Tang Jing did not say a word. His eyes were bright and full of expression. He stared at Xiao Bai without blinking, his face revealing a serious expression, as if he was deep in thought. If one were to talk about who understood Xiao Bai the most among the people present, it would undoubtedly be Tang Jing. Chapter 1670. Although Xiao Bai was glaring at Hao Tianwang like a tiger watching its prey, only Tang Jing could tell that Xiao Bai was bluffing. His strength might not be able to defeat Hao Tianwang. Hao Tianwang was momentarily stunned by the huge change just now and did not notice this clue, so he was attacked by Xiao Bai and retreated step by step. The more he retreated, the more powerful Xiao Bai's aura became, as if it really overshadowed Hao Tianwang. Boom! With a shocking explosion, another change occurred on Huagua Mountain. Huagua Mountain became towering into the clouds and became like a person. The four symbols. Everyone immediately recognized it. Wasn't this the four symbols? Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. He had actually forgotten to ask Xiao Bai about the four symbols just now. Now that he saw the four symbols appear, he truly heaved a sigh of relief. Everything about the four symbols added another heavy chip to the already tilted scales. Hao Tianwang's subordinates cried out in alarm, especially when they saw the tall bodies of the four symbols rise from the ground and cover the sky, completely blocking the sunlight above their heads. They also retreated quickly like Hao Tianwang. They were weaker than Hao Tianwang, so they were naturally more afraid of this scene. King Wuling gritted his teeth and shouted loudly to stop his subordinates from retreating. However, Hao Tianwang was also retreating. King Wuling could not stop all of this at all. Bang! Hao Tianwang crashed into the Kunpeng's body, and only then did he stop. He looked at Xiao Bai in surprise and said, "Your royal family actually has such a method. I really misjudged you." Xiao Bai said in a deep voice, "How can a traitor like you completely understand the royal family's foundation? Let's see what other methods you have now. Use them all." Xiao Bai was full of vigor. Hao Tianwang was already feeling guilty, so he didn't dare to act rashly. He lowered his eyes as if he didn't dare to look at Xiao Bai. When Xiao Bai approached again, Hao Tianwang finally couldn't take it anymore. He looked at the four symbols again. The four symbols was also strange. It was actually one of the three conditions. He couldn't figure it out at all. Previously, he was already subdued by the divine ability of the four symbols, and now, he was even more unable to see through the truth of the four symbols. He hesitated for a long time before finally gritting his teeth and saying, "Retreat! Retreat." It was a simple word, but everyone had different reactions and feelings. King Wuling looked at Hao Tianwang in disbelief and shouted, "Father, why are we retreating? It's better to eliminate this group of people in one go." Hao Tianwang's gaze was cold as ice as he said in a dignified manner, "Carry out my orders." King Wuling was helpless. Although he had thousands of words to say, he couldn't argue. He replied resentfully, "Yes." Among the others, there were those who didn't understand, but there were also those who couldn't wait to escape. Whether it was because they had no choice or because they couldn't wait, they all retreated. One by one they rushed onto the Kunpeng. The Kunpeng was extremely fast. Its huge body was like a moving ship, flying towards the horizon with a whoosh. The elder and the rest cheered. They couldn't wait to chase after the victory. They shouted, "Hao Tianwang, you traitor, you know how to be afraid. Why don't you surrender?" It was too late to say, but in a flash the elder wanted to chase after Hao Tianwang. Tang Zheng hurriedly shouted, "Don't chase after a cornered enemy." He saw through Xiao Bai's background. Since Hao Tianwang had already retreated, there was no need to chase after him. Otherwise, if he really angered Hao Tianwang, it would be counterproductive. The elder stopped and looked at Tang Zheng in confusion. He asked angrily, "Why aren't we chasing after him? This is a great opportunity for us to annihilate this traitor." Tang Zheng lowered his voice and said earnestly, "Elder, this matter isn't as simple as you think." As he spoke, he looked in the direction of Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai didn't chase after him. Instead, he met Tang Zheng's gaze. Their eyes met and they understood each other's thoughts. Xiao Bai flew back to everyone's side. Everyone's eyes immediately focused on him. The elder looked at Xiao Bai excitedly and said, "Your Majesty, why didn't we chase after him? If we miss this great opportunity, there will be even better opportunities in the future." Xiao Bai smiled bitterly and said, "Elder, this matter isn't as simple as you think." The elder didn't understand and said matter-of-factly, "But Your Majesty, you've already inherited the divine ability of the imperial ancestor. How can that traitor be your match?" "It's true that I've inherited this divine ability, but I haven't fully mastered it. I'm still far from true success. I'm not Hao Tianwang's match at all," Xiao Bai said dejectedly, but he had to admit this cruel reality. As soon as these words came out, it was not only to the elder but also to the others, causing them to instantly feel cold. Everyone looked at each other, unable to accept this reality. They originally thought that they could hold their heads high and turn defeat into victory, but it turned out that they were still at a disadvantage. Tang Zheng said indifferently, "Hao Tianwang's cultivation is very powerful. It's not that easy to surpass him." As for this time, he fled in a sorry state completely because he was frightened by the scene just now. Or rather, he was frightened by the legend of the imperial family. After seeing Xiao Bai's scene, he didn't dare to attack rashly and act rashly. When everyone heard this, they gradually understood what was going on and felt as if they had suddenly come to a realization. Xiaobai nodded and said, "Master is right. I was just bluffing just now to scare Hao Tianwang away. Otherwise we would have definitely lost this battle." Everyone said in their hearts that they were lucky. The ancestor was secretly ashamed. He said in his heart that if he really chased after them, he would have ruined His Majesty's plan and caused everyone to fall into a dangerous situation. Tang Zheng glanced at the messy battlefield and the destroyed Suicide Valley. The Suicide Valley had already turned into ruins, and there was no way to continue living here. Moreover, this place had already been exposed. If Hao Tianwang came back to his senses and attacked them, what would they do? Therefore they had to leave the Suicide Valley as soon as possible. Tang Zheng made a prompt decision and said, "Organize everyone, treat the wounded, and take care of the funeral for our fallen comrades. Then we will leave this place as soon as possible." Xiaobai nodded in agreement. Right now we can't clash head-on with Hao Tianwang for the time being. If we want to win the final victory of this war and take back the heavens beyond heaven, this is a protracted battle. We have to preserve our strength as much as possible. The others were no longer as blind as before. They all nodded in agreement. This battle had taught them a profound lesson, and it was also a profound lesson. Although they usually vowed to make a comeback and take back the heavens beyond heaven, they now understood that this was a difficult battle. It was not something that could be done with just shouting slogans. Of course, their hopes of victory had not been completely dispelled. On the contrary, Xiaobai's change allowed them to see hope. The rise of the imperial family was imperative. Everyone started to move. When they saw their injured and sacrificed comrades, they all became silent. The grief in their hearts turned into strength and was stored in the bottom of their hearts. They were only waiting for the day when they would completely explode. Xiaobai was worried and asked, "Master, what should we do next?" Tang Zheng looked at Xiaobai, who had transformed into a stone monkey and the legend of the 72 transformations. He couldn't help but become more curious about the imperial family. What kind of history did the imperial family have? Chapter 1671. The Wildlands. After hearing Tang Zheng's decision, many people were confused. Tian Chanzi's eyelids twitched a few times and he looked excited. His sect was in the Wildlands. Now he could finally see his sect. The great ancestor was worried and said, "The Wildlands is a wasteland and it's not a place to stay for long. It's easy to be trapped there by the enemy." Tang Zheng disagreed and said, "That was in the past. How can we be trapped to death so easily?" After a pause he continued, "Now that we're weak and the enemy is too strong, we must unite all the forces that can be united." Yi Dingdang and the others understood the history of the human world and agreed. They agreed and said, "That makes sense. Hao Tianwang is powerful but we're not bad. At worst we can use guerrilla warfare and let them be chaotic first. There will always be an opportunity to take advantage of." The great ancestor and the others looked at Yi Dingdang in surprise. They did not expect the little girl to say such things. Tang Jing smiled and said, "Xiaobai, you should tell everyone what realm your cultivation is at first to give them some confidence." As soon as he said that, he immediately attracted everyone's attention. The great ancestor asked excitedly in a trembling voice, "Your Majesty, what realm is your cultivation?" Xiaobai was a little embarrassed. He hesitated and said, "I'm already at the 8th stage of the Mahayana realm." One by one the sound of gasping was heard and there were exclamations everywhere. 8th stage of the Mahayana realm. Oh my god, your cultivation is so high. Pairs of eyes stared at Xiaobai. In the blink of an eye, his cultivation had increased so much from the 6th stage of the Mahayana realm to the 8th stage of the Mahayana realm. Tang Jing knew that he did not have the ability and opportunity to do so. He had worked hard and advanced to the 7th stage of the Mahayana realm because of all kinds of opportunities, but Xiaobai had already surpassed him. This is the foundation. I'm fighting alone, while Xiaobai is standing on the shoulders of the imperial family. The two can't be compared at all. Tang Jing sighed. He wasn't envious or jealous. Instead he was sincerely happy for Xiaobai. Now Xiaobai's cultivation was the highest among them all. Xiaobai said with certainty, "Master will definitely improve faster than me and will soon surpass me." The Grand Elder did not comment, but he clearly did not believe these words. He knew very well how difficult it was to improve towards the end. Xiaobai's improvement was due to the inheritance and foundation of the royal family. How could it be so easy for others to surpass him? In the past, Xiaobai's cultivation had always been suppressed by Tang Zheng. The Grand Ancestor felt that it was detrimental to the dignity of the imperial family. Now that he had finally surpassed Tang Zheng, He immediately felt proud and elated. He had preserved the glory of the imperial family. Xiaobai, how many changes do you know now? Tang Jing asked curiously. 3. After Xiaobai said this, his body underwent a huge change. In the blink of an eye, he had changed back to his previous appearance. His entire body was snow white and covered in hair. His 4 hooves stepped on fire and soared into the sky. He was awe-inspiring. In the next second, Xiaobai changed again. This time, he turned into a human and quietly stood in front of Tang Jing. After everyone witnessed this scene, they were immediately shocked. This was definitely not an illusion. He had truly changed into another appearance. Illusion techniques could be seen through, but Xiaobai's transformation technique could not be seen through. This was much better than the 100 Changes Star-Lord's transformation technique. Is this the 72 transformations? Tang Jing asked enviously. Xiaobai lightly nodded. Yes, truly mastering it through a comprehensive study. Comprehending the 72 transformations is a great divine ability. What I know now is only the tip of the iceberg. Just the tip of the iceberg was already an eye-opener. Just how powerful would the true divine ability be? Everyone exclaimed in their hearts. Tang Jing's gaze turned to the 4 symbols again. He asked curiously, why is the 4 symbols one of the conditions for all of this to happen? Obviously this question hit the nail on the head. The 4 symbols were things of the mortal world. Why would they form a connection with the sky beyond heaven and even contribute to all of this? The 4 symbols and Xiaobai looked at each other and shook their heads blankly. The 4 symbols said in a daze, Master, when I landed on the ground, that rock deeply attracted me. I unconsciously connected with it. It contained a surging power as if it was the purest power in the world. Everything that happened after that was seen by everyone. We caused this ball of power to explode and fuse into Xiaobai's body. Thus, he has the divine ability of the 72 transformations. The 4 symbols spoke endlessly, but it caused Tang Jing's thoughts to become more and more confused. He could not grasp the opportunity within at all. Xiaobai also looked at Tang Jing blankly. As the person involved, Xiaobai was also confused. Tang Jing let out a long breath and temporarily threw this question to the back of his mind. If he couldn't figure it out now, then he could only wait for the future. Let's leave the Suicide Valley first. We'll talk about other things later. Tang Jing made the final decision, temporarily dispelling the thoughts of the others who wanted to get to the bottom of this. In this battle there were casualties on both sides. Even the Witch clan had sacrificed their clansmen, but none of the Witch clan had any complaints. The Witch clan was a natural warrior and it was their destiny to die in battle. If they died of old age at home, that would be a true humiliation, and dying on the battlefield would be an honor. The Patriarch and the others had witnessed the bravery of the Witch clan. Although many of the Witch clan's cultivations were not as high as theirs, their temperament and indomitable fighting spirit moved them. It was something that ordinary people could not compare to. This battle allowed the 2 forces to perfectly merge together, eliminating the estrangement and unfamiliarity between them. The somersault cloud carried the wounded, and the others all rode on their magic treasure and flew into the air, flying towards the wilderness. Xiaobai came to Tang Jing's side and as he flew he said, Master, just now I happened to see a familiar figure, I don't know if it was me who saw it. Tang Jing looked at him deeply and said, I know who you saw. Xiaobai raised his eyebrows and asked in surprise, Master, you saw him too? Tang Jing nodded and said coldly, Sacrifice. The son of Baimei Daoist, the leader of the righteous path. Although I've only seen him once, he left a deep impression on me. How could I forget? Xiaobai flew into a rage. It really is him. I thought I had misjudged him. He was on the back of the Kunpeng and was in cahoots with Hao Tianwang. He must have something to do with this attack. At first, they thought that they had accidentally been discovered by Hao Tianwang, so they led the army to attack the Suicide Valley. Now it seemed that they were wrong. It was not that they had exposed their whereabouts, but that someone had tipped them off. Is it the wild dog? Xiaobai was skeptical. Only the wild dog knew about the existence of the Suicide Valley and them. Tang Jing thought for a moment, then shook his head and said, It's not him. Although I haven't known the wild dog for long, I'm sure he's not the kind of person who would leak information. Then how did Sacrifice know that we were in the Suicide Valley? I'm afraid the wild dog accidentally exposed this place, and then Baimei Daoist and his son sold us out in exchange for wealth and glory. This is the so-called righteous path. Tang Jing scoffed, feeling great disdain. Xiaobai was filled with killing intent. Then I will properly settle this score with them. Chapter 1672. The barbarian land was already in sight. In the barbarian land, the righteous faction did not know what had happened in the Suicide Valley. They were still living their lives step by step, completely unaware that their lives would be turned upside down. The righteous faction was trying to survive in the cracks. They had been used to this kind of life for hundreds of years. Although the conditions in the barbarian land were more difficult than before, they still persevered. It was better than death. But some of them had their lives turned upside down. Kingsaman was one of them. People would weigh the pros and cons and judge the situation. Ever since they knew that a powerful senior in Kingsaman was still alive and had a close relationship with the outsider, many righteous faction members' attitudes towards Kingsaman had changed drastically. The distinct Void sect had already declined and became an insignificant small sect. Normally they would not be placed in the eyes of others. But now they were no longer the same. Many people realized that Kingsaman would rise. Of course they wanted to curry favor with Kingsaman before it rose. They hoped that Kingsaman would give them a hand in the future because of their old friendship. The leader of Kingsaman, Taiksuzi, naturally became one of the most popular people. Although they knew that Baimei Daoist would not be happy, everyone still contacted Taiksuzi openly or secretly. Another person who changed his fate was Wild Dog. Because he was born ugly and his cultivation was not very high, he used to be looked down upon by others and was someone they respected from a distance. But now it was different. He was in high demand. Moreover, there were even beautiful female cultivators who extended an olive branch to him and invited him to discuss the Tao of dual cultivation. Wild Dog was overjoyed. He was always smiling in front of people, as if he had climbed up from the dark abyss to the clouds. The others were jealous, disdainful, or fawning over him, but no one exposed him. But there were also people who wanted to watch a good show, waiting to see what would happen to Wild Dog. Wild Dog, however, was not blinded by the superficial glory. A small man like him had been surviving at the bottom for too long. How could he not understand the rules of this society? Naturally, he had his own way of surviving as a small man. Although his smile was brighter than a flower and he seemed to be carried away, he knew clearly in his heart what he should do and what he should say. He was not out of line at all. Some people were happy while others were sad. Baimei Daoist looked at these people and gritted his teeth in hatred. However, he still had to feign civility and smile. You guys jump around. There aren't many good days left. I've calculated the time. She must have already brought Hao Tianwang to attack the Suicide Valley. There's no suspense about the outcome of this battle. I'm just waiting for my triumphant return, then I can take care of these eyesores. Baimei Daoist's wishful thinking was extremely good. He watched coldly from the sidelines. He was only waiting for a time to strike, and then his big knife would fall without hesitation. At that time, after Tang Zheng and others left the barbarian land, Baimei Daoist sent his son to inform Hao Tianwang to give Tang Zheng and others a fatal blow. However, Shi Ming circled around the imperial city for many days but did not see Hao Tianwang. Finally, she saw the great battle in the Sky City and was directly scared back to the barbarian land. They were reprimanded by White Eyebrows Taoist for a long time. In the end, when Wild Dog returned, the situation of the righteous faction quietly changed. Only then did the two fathers make a risky move. They risked their lives to return alone, and went deep into the tiger's den to report. This time he was brave enough to risk his life and his luck was good enough. He really succeeded in leaking the information. Baimei Daoist did not see his son Shi Ming. Instead, he sensed that the array set up outside the barbarian land was violently fluctuating, as if it could collapse at any time. Baimei Daoist stood up, surprised and doubtful. He muttered, "What's going on? Could it be that someone has entered the barbarian land? But with such a big movement, it doesn't seem like it's from one person or a few people, but many people. Where did so many people come from? Could it be Hao Tianwang's people?" He thought about it and beamed with joy. Could it be that Shi Ming brought them here? She's so stupid to bring them to the barbarian land. Won't everything we do be exposed? He did not dare to sit still and wait for death. He hurriedly rushed forward, wanting to see what was going on. In the barbarian land, figures flew up from the desolate cracks of the stone, rushed into the sky and looked into the distance. When they saw the large group flying quickly, everyone was stunned. They had hidden in the barbarian land for many days and had never seen so many outsiders. Who were these people? What was their purpose? Their hearts were in a mess and they were extremely nervous. They stretched their necks and tried to see who the people were. White Eyebrows Taoist looked around and saw that everyone was nervous. However, he felt complacent in his heart. How could this be? Although it was too rash to bring so many people to the barbarian land, Bai Mei Daoist thought about it and felt that there was still a chance. He might as well show his claws and teeth in front of everyone, or rather, his strength, and let others see. In the future, who would dare to go against him? That would be suicide. Then his throne as the leader of the alliance would be more secure. At the thought of this, his mood was not nervous. He stared in the direction of the people, his eyes full of expectation. Wild Dog did not say a word. He looked at them from afar, his ugly face very complicated. Suddenly, his eyes were cold and there was joy in the depths of his eyes. It's them? He sensed a familiar aura among the people who came. His heart was set, and he immediately recognized the identity of this group of people. Especially when the white cloud approached, it was very conspicuous. How could he not know who these people were? The others did not know much about Tang Zheng, so they did not see any clues for the time being. Wild Dog couldn't wait any longer. With a whoosh, he rushed towards the newcomer. Wild Dog, what are you doing? The others did not know what was going on and asked loudly. Wild Dog turned a deaf ear and flew directly to the people who came. Finally he saw the clues clearly. Immediately he was overjoyed and directly knelt down in the air. He was so excited that he spoke incoherently and shouted loudly, "You are finally here." This action and reaction made the others stunned, but most of these people were smart. They immediately understood what was going on and their faces changed greatly. They had already realized who these people were. Bai Mei Daoist's expression froze in an instant, as if he had eaten a fly. His expression froze, his chin drooped down and he was dumbfounded. Looking at Wild Dog kneeling in front of him, Tang Zheng's lips curled into a smile as he said, "Wild Dog, get up." "Yes, I've been waiting for you." Wild Dog was very excited and his eyes were filled with tears because he knew what this meant to him. The courtesy he had received before was just a castle in the air. Only when Tang Zheng came to the barbarian land again would his life really change. Heaven Monk's gaze swept past the Wild Dog and looked at the people in the distance. His eyes were filled with a complicated expression, and his legs felt like they were filled with lead. He was actually unable to move at all. Was he afraid of returning home? No, Tian Chanzi's situation was far more complicated than that. He was the only one who knew the reason. He looked from afar as if he was looking for the people of Kingsaman in the crowd, but he was afraid to see his own disciples. It seemed that there was something he did not want to face. Please follow my WeChat official account, Tang Xiao. I have news about new books. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1673. Everyone from the good faction saw Wild Dog's every move, and the crowd also flew in front of them. Each pair of eyes clearly saw the faces of this group of people. Immediately, each and every one of their faces changed unpredictably, their expressions extremely rich, but without a doubt, their eyes intentionally or unintentionally glanced at Bai Mei Daoist. Obviously, the arrival of this group of people will make Bai Mei Daoist's life difficult. Taixuzi has been worried about news of his sect's seniors. Seeing that Tang Zheng has arrived, he impatiently rushed out of the crowd, attracting everyone's attention. Bai Mei Daoist gritted his teeth itching with hatred, secretly said, "Taixuzi, are you so impatient? Do you really think that Kingsaman can make a comeback and suppress me, Bai Mei Daoist?" Bai Mei Daoist was indignant in his heart, but he did not dare to say it out loud. Even when faced with other people's gloating eyes, Bai Mei Daoist only saw it in his eyes and remembered it in his heart. On the contrary, his face quickly squeezed out a smile, changing his expression faster than flipping a book, hurriedly greeted Tang Zheng and the others, laughing loudly. "Everyone meeting again after such a long time, it's really a great blessing in life." Although he did not understand how these people did not die, Bai Mei Daoist still chose to feign civility, to avoid revealing any flaws. Tang Zheng and the others stopped, looking at Taixuzi and Bai Mei Daoist standing in front of them, their eyes thought-provoking, difficult to understand. Of course, everyone's focus was different. Tian Chanzi's attention was not on Bai Mei Daoist, but was staring at Taixuzi. Taixuzi also met Tian Chanzi's gaze, 4 eyes meeting. Although they were in the crowd, these two pairs of eyes still locked onto each other. That was because they all practiced the same cultivation technique. Naturally, they could tell that the unique aura was completely different from that of the others. "Senior?" Taixuzi's heart was filled with apprehension as he shouted excitedly. However, thousands of words were stuck in his throat and he couldn't say a single word. The word, "senior," caused Tian Chanzi's expression to tighten, and he stammered, unable to say a word for a long time. In the eyes of the others, these two people's reactions were not very strange. They just thought that they were too excited to reunite after a long time. Tang Jing even gave Tianqianzi a push and jokingly said, "You've already met your fellow disciple. Why are you still so shy like a woman?" For the first time, Tianqianzi did not refute Tang Jing. Seeing Tianqianzi's abnormal reaction, Tang Jing was very surprised, but he didn't say anything. Taixuzi bowed deeply and respectfully. He said excitedly, "The entire Kingsuman welcomes Senior back to our sect." Tianqianzi's expression became more and more complicated. He had thousands of words to say but he couldn't say them. He was like a completely different person. Tang Jing finally realized that Tianqianzi was a little strange. This was not like his style at all. Taixuzi said respectfully, "May I know Senior's name? It's good for us juniors to know who you are and remember you in our hearts." The other Kingsuman people also walked out of the crowd and came to the front. They looked at Tianqianzi with burning eyes, wanting to see the elegance of their senior. Looking at the pairs of burning eyes, Tianqianzi's eyes flickered. He seemed to want to avoid them as if he didn't hear Taixuzi's question. "May I know Senior's name?" Taixuzi saw that Tianqianzi didn't say a word, so he asked again. He couldn't help but feel nervous. Tianqianzi still turned a deaf ear as if he was possessed. Tang Jing was finally sure that there was a secret behind this. He said in a low voice, "Tianqianzi, what's wrong with you? Don't call me that." Tianqianzi heard Tang Jing's words, as if he had just woken up from a dream. He shouted loudly as if he was possessed, but it was obviously too late. He stopped abruptly and his expression became very serious. "Don't tell me he doesn't want me to call him by his name?" Tang Jing thought. He immediately guessed Tianqianzi's unfinished words. He was confused and couldn't figure out Tianqianzi's true intentions. However, the three words Tianqianzi were clearly heard by others. The Kingsuman people had been listening attentively, so how could they miss these three words? Suddenly they felt as if they had found a treasure. They finally knew the senior's name. Now the whole Kingsuman would be under the senior's protection. Tianqianzi, this name sounded familiar. They immediately compared it with the names of the famous seniors recorded in Kingsuman. If there was anyone in Kingsuman who knew the history of the sects and the seniors best, it would be the sect leader, Taixuzi. Ever since he knew that there were seniors in Kingsuman still alive, Taixuzi had already made a list of the famous figures in Kingsuman's history. However, the name Tianqianzi was not on the list. Taixuzi was slightly stunned. He didn't understand what was going on. He muttered to himself, "This name sounds so familiar. I must have seen it somewhere before. How could I forget it?" Suddenly, a lightning-like thought flashed through his mind. He finally remembered why this name sounded so familiar. He widened his eyes and looked at Tianqianzi in disbelief. He opened his mouth wide and couldn't close it for a long time. He was also speechless. The other Kingsuman people also came to their senses and exclaimed in disbelief, "Tianqianzi, it's him. How could it be him?" The crowd looked at each other in dismay. It was hard for them to accept all this. It seemed to be an extremely cruel reality. The others didn't know what was going on, but they also saw the problem. Tianqianzi's face darkened. It was as if he had lost all of his energy and was in a daze. Tang Jing had never seen Tianqianzi so depressed before. He didn't want to see Tianqianzi so depressed. He roared in a low voice. It was as if a bolt from the blue had exploded in Tianqianzi's ears. He said loudly, "Tianqianzi, pull yourself together. What is going on?" Taixuzi looked at Tianqianzi in a daze. He asked, "Senior, how can you be Tianqianzi?" Tianqianzi gradually came to his senses. Although he still looked like he had lost his soul, he stammered, "I am Tianqianzi." He seemed to have used up all of his strength to say this sentence. His whole body was drenched in sweat. It was as if all of his strength had been sucked out. From top to bottom of the clear void sect, even Taixuzi was no exception. Their faces all turned pale, and some of them kept shaking their heads as though they could not accept this reality. They muttered to themselves as though they were possessed, "How could Senior be the heaven monk? How can this be?" They couldn't accept this reality at all. What is so special about Tianqianzi's identity? Why are they reacting so strongly? This question popped up in many people's minds. Tianqianzi gritted his teeth. His expression became more and more complicated. Seeing that he couldn't get an answer from Tianqianzi, Tang Jing's eyes fell on Taixuzi. He asked in a low voice, "Tell me what is going on?" Taixuzi stammered, "Tianqianzi is a traitor of Kingsuman." Chapter 1674. Traitor of Kingsuman. Taixuzi's short sentence deeply shocked the others. Screams of disbelief rang out. Pairs of eyes looked at Tian Chanzi, but they couldn't see that he was a traitor. Tang Jing stared at Tian Chanzi with burning eyes. He had thought of many possibilities, but never would he have thought of this. Tian Chanzi didn't defend himself. Instead, he looked sad and haggard, as if he had aged 10 years in an instant. This was an eternal pain in his heart. Now that it was exposed, he felt as if his whole body was being cut by knives in front of so many people. Tang Jing thought for a while and shook his head silently. He didn't believe that Tian Chanzi was a traitor of Kingsaman. Because, since the day they met, Tian Chanzi had been full of respect for the sect. This couldn't be faked. He believed that Tian Chanzi must be like this in his heart, which was why he could act the same. Then why did Taixuzi say that Tian Chanzi was a traitor? What was the secret behind this? Tian Chanzi's reaction was so strange and he didn't refute it. Obviously he admitted to this point. What was going on? Tang Jing took a deep breath and asked, Taixuzi, what is going on? Taixuzi's expression also became very complicated. He thought that it was a respected senior in the sect, but it turned out that it was a traitor who was condemned in speech and writing. This huge contrast made him feel like he was on a roller coaster, falling from the sky to the bottom of the valley. Seeing that Tang Jing was looking at him with a dignified expression, Taixuzi felt a little guilty. This was a scandal in the sect and it hadn't been publicized. Now it seemed that it had to be made public. Taixuzi looked deeply at Tian Chanzi and said with emotion, "It's a long story. This wasn't something that could be explained in a few words, but Taixuzi's concise and comprehensive explanation allowed the others to gradually understand. Immediately, the way they looked at Tian Chanzi changed again and again. It turned out that Tian Chanzi's betrayal of his master was actually such a complicated and bizarre experience. Back then, Tian Chanzi was also a famous figure in Kingsaman. He was even one of the best among the younger generation in the cultivation world. Many people believed that he would be the next leader of Kingsaman. But in the end, he did not become the head of the sect. Not only did he trespass into the forbidden area of the sect, but he also kidnapped the newly married wife of the new head. He betrayed the sect and was nailed to the pillar of shame, which was remembered by the descendants of Kingsaman for generations to come. He became a bad example to warn the disciples not to become a person like Tian Chanzi. There were many records about Tian Chanzi in Kingsaman. Most of them said that he was unpardonably evil, was too evil, lusted after women, and even dared to touch the fiancée of the new head of the sect. In short, Tian Chanzi's evil deeds were too numerous to be recorded. Tang Jing was stunned after hearing this. He knew Tian Chanzi the best, so he could definitely guarantee that Tian Chanzi was definitely not such a person. Then what was the secret behind this that no one knew? Tian Chanzi didn't say a word. He looked calm, but the twitching of his mouth showed that his heart had long been stirred up. Of all the people, only Bai Mei Daoist was the happiest. He didn't expect such a farce, which greatly reduced the prestige of this group of outsiders. What the righteous faction hated the most was traitors who betrayed their sect. Since this group of people were together, then they were jackals of the same tribe. Even if they were strong, they were not a monolithic block. Bai Mei Daoist could make an issue out of this and sow discord so that this group of people would not be able to gain a firm foothold in the righteous faction. Tang Jing's thoughts were all on Tian Chanzi. The importance of the other righteous faction members was far less important than Tian Chanzi. If he didn't figure out this problem, he definitely wouldn't give up. Thus, he stared at Tian Chanzi aggressively and unhappily asked, "Tian Chanzi, are you mute? Where did your usual imposing manner go? Why are you so dispirited? People are slandering you like this. Don't tell me you don't have a single word to refute?" It was precisely because Tang Jing believed in Tian Chanzi that he naturally didn't believe Taixuzi's words. Thus, he directly asked Tian Chanzi to refute. When Taixuzi heard this, he nervously said, "This is the sect's record, not slandering." "Shut up." Tang Jing didn't even turn his head. In his heart he didn't care about Taixuzi at all. As for Kingsaman, it was also because Tian Chanzi and Fang Shishir were from this sect that he viewed this sect in a different light. Taixuzi's neck shrunk. He kept quiet out of fear and didn't dare to say anything else. When Tian Chanzi heard Tang Jing's reprimand, his whole body trembled. It was as if something in the bottom of his heart had been stimulated. He raised his head, his eyes dull. Finally he faintly sighed and said, "Let bygones be bygones. Don't mention it again." "Why don't you mention it? There must be a misunderstanding. How can you not explain it clearly? How could Tang Jing let it go like this?" This involved Tian Chanzi's reputation. He was more concerned about it than Tian Chanzi. Tian Chanzi said indifferently, "Let bygones be bygones. There's no need to mention it." You. Tang Jing stared straight at Tianquanzi. However, Tianquanzi didn't respond at all. He was as still as a pine tree, making Tang Jing feel helpless. In the end, he had no choice. He couldn't pry open Tianquanzi's mouth. If you don't say it, then you can't return to the sect. Tang Jing hit the nail on the head and poked Tianquanzi's weak spot. Tianquanzi's face stiffened. This was indeed his weak spot. His breathing became rapid. In fact, this time he came to Sky Beyond Sky because he wanted to return to the sect. However, he also knew that this was not an easy task. However, he didn't give up hope because this had always been his dream. In the beginning, he was sealed in the ancient Clear Heaven Scroll because he wanted to return to the sect. This led to him being sealed for thousands of years. There was a rule in Kingsaman. If a disciple made a great contribution to the sect, he could be pardoned from all crimes. Even if he was expelled from the sect, he could still return to the sect. For a cultivation sect, a peerless cultivation method was a great contribution. It was enough to meet this condition. All crimes would be pardoned, and the abandoned disciple could return to the sect. Tianquanzi wanted to obtain the ancient Clear Heaven Scroll and then give it to the sect. He wanted to fight for a chance to return to the sect. Unfortunately, before he could succeed, he died in a fierce battle with the demon clan. Both of them were sealed in the ancient Clear Heaven Scroll. Tianquanzi looked at Tang Jing in a daze. Ever since he lost the ancient Clear Heaven Scroll, Tianquanzi placed his hopes on Tang Jing. He thought that if he could find a genius like Tang Jing for the sect and let him enter Kingsaman, it would be a great contribution to the sect and he could return to the sect. However, Tang Jing didn't enter Kingsaman. Tianquanzi didn't expect that Tang Jing would become so powerful that he would lose his last chance to return to the sect. This time he came to Sky Beyond Sky with mixed feelings. He wanted to see his fellow sect members, but he was also afraid. In the end, it was proven that the actual situation was even worse than what he had imagined. He was actually used as a negative example and spread throughout the sect. Even after 1,000 years, his disciples and grand disciples still remembered him and treated him as the shame of the distinct void sect. Chapter 1675. The atmosphere in the barbarian land became strange. Tang Jing and the others who had come aggressively did not have the desired effect because of Tianquanzi. Kingsaman felt as if they had fallen from a high altitude into an abyss. The seniors they had high hopes for had turned out to be traitors. This was equivalent to slapping them hard in the face, and it happened in front of so many people. One could imagine how they felt. Among all the people, Baimei Daoist was the happiest. His shaky position seemed to have stabilized. No matter how powerful these people were, it would not be easy for them to make waves in the righteous faction if their reputation was tarnished because they had allied themselves with the righteous traitors. However, many people still noticed the ancestor elder and the others. These natives of the outland had shocked them greatly, and they felt that they were in imminent danger. The righteous faction had always been hostile to the natives of the outland. Now that the ancestor elder and the others were living in the barbarian land, it was as if a fierce tiger was beside them. Tang Jing's attention was focused on Tianquanzi's matter, so he did not have the time to deal with the matter of risking life and decided to settle the score later. Baimei Daoist did not know that his conspiracy had been seen through, and he was still helping these people to settle down. After settling these people down, White Eyebrows Taoist carried out his plan. Although he had risked his life and hadn't returned to inform the others, he didn't know what had happened, but it didn't hinder his plan. He wanted to take advantage of the fact that these people had not gained a firm foothold in the barbarian land to fan the flames and stir up the emotions of others. It would be best if he could drive them out and protect his own interests and status. The righteous faction was a huge alliance. It was not just one sect. Other than Kingsaman, there were many other sects, big and small. A rumor began to spread among these sections. The outland was treacherous and had allied themselves with the righteous traitors. This was enough to prove their roots. If these people were allowed to stay in the barbarian land, wouldn't it mean that the righteous faction had allied themselves with them? The righteous faction was called the righteous faction because it was in sharp contrast to the devil tribe. The righteous faction insisted on using morality as the yardstick, and they could not coexist with darkness and evil. Doesn't this mean that the righteous path has fallen? Many people had strange thoughts in their minds. Even if the righteous path were to perish, they could not lose their nature. If they were to compromise, then what was the difference between them and the devil race? A bold idea sprouted in their minds. Expel these people. Even if we die, we don't need their protection. Moreover, they may not be able to protect them. This thought was like a wildfire, quickly burning in the hearts of many of the good faction people. The undercurrent was surging, but Tang Zheng did not know. They did not tell the righteous path about everything that happened in the Suicide Valley. A group of people were gathered together, frowning. Many people tried to persuade Tian Chanzi to tell the truth, but Tian Chanzi remained silent, as if he had suddenly become mute. The venerable ancestor did not care much about this issue. Instead, he said to Xiao Bai excitedly, "Your Majesty, we have retreated to the barbarian land. But if Heavenly King Hao invades, how are we going to defend?" Everyone knew very well that although they had scared away Hao Tianwang at that time, there would still be a moment when he regained his senses. At that time, Hao Tianwang's anger would probably destroy the heavens and the earth, and would even kill them. The savage land might not be able to withstand Hao Tianwang's anger. Xiao Bai was not in a hurry to answer. Instead, he raised his head and looked at Tang Zheng. Obviously, although Xiao Bai's strength was above Tang Zheng's, he still followed Tang Zheng's lead. This kind of big matter still had to be decided by Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng retracted his gaze from Tian Chanzi and said in a deep voice, "We need to unite the righteous path and use the righteous path's strength. Then, with the savage land as a stronghold, we can set up the Heaven's Chest to defend against Hao Tianwang's attack." Heaven's Chest. Many people's eyes lit up, but the ancestor and the others were confused. They had never heard of these two words before. If there is a Heaven's Chest, then it might not be impossible to defend against Hao Tianwang's attack. Xiao Bai seemed to be deep in thought as he said with high fighting spirit. The ancestor did not understand and hurriedly asked, "Your Majesty, what is the Heaven's Chess? Is it that useful?" It was no wonder that the ancestor questioned the power of the Heaven's Chess. Hao Tianwang's strength was simply too shocking. Xiao Bai smiled mysteriously and said, "As for the power of the Heaven's Chess, it's better for Master to explain." Swish. Immediately, everyone's eyes focused on Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng knew that at this critical moment he had to cheer everyone up, so he did not hide anything and directly explained, "The Heaven's Chess absorbs the power of the stars in the 9 heavens and uses the world as a chessboard. Every blade of grass and every tree in the chessboard can be used as a weapon to kill and defend against the enemy. Once you fall into the Heaven's Chess, you will lose control of your body as if you can't control it." Although it was only a few words, it made the ancestor and the others tremble in fear. However, they were still skeptical and asked, "Is it really that powerful?" Tang Zheng did not nod, but the others had already nodded in agreement. The crowd's eyes were bright. Seeing the others nod, the ancestor and the others' doubts gradually disappeared. However, immediately after, their eyes lit up and they said eagerly, "Then why aren't you quickly setting up the Heaven's Chess in the savage land? This is not something that can be done overnight. I need to first explore the savage land situation, and I need the cooperation of the righteous faction before I can set up the Heaven's Chess." Tang Jing said in a low voice. Everyone understood and their confidence gradually returned. Now they were not afraid of Hao Tianwang's attack. Instead they were looking forward to it. Many people wanted to see the power of the Heaven's Chess. In the next few days Tang Jing continued to explore the savage land. The savage land was not small, it was a wasteland without a single blade of grass. It was completely barren, completely bare rocks, and there was not even a river. Seeing all this, Tang Jing only had one thought in his mind. Desolation, desolation to the extreme. No wonder the natives of Beyond Heaven were unwilling to set foot in this area. It was worthless. The tree of life can turn a desert into an oasis. If there's a tree of life, maybe this savage land can become a fertile land. Tang Jing's head moved and suddenly thought of something. However, just as this thought flashed through his mind, his heart suddenly trembled. It seemed that he had not seen the tree of life in Beyond Heaven. If Beyond Heaven was a large world, then where was the tree of life? Ever since he encountered the fire Qilin at the base of the tree of life in the mortal world, Tang Zheng could not help but be filled with curiosity about the tree of life. Tang Zheng was connected to the Heaven's Chess and the tree of life, but he did not expect the undercurrent to be surging in the savage land. A hidden storm had quietly formed. In these few days Tian Chanzi did not stay in the house. He also wandered around the savage land, but his focus was on the various sections. However, everyone looked at Tian Chanzi with a very complicated gaze, and it was becoming more and more thought-provoking. Chapter 1676. Tang Jing returned from exploring the barbarian land again. From afar he saw a group of people blocking the place where his people lived. The noise was endless. Although the barbarian land was desolate, the ground was not suitable for building houses. Therefore, the righteous faction built their houses under the barbarian land, under the layers of hard rocks. The barbarian land seemed to have become a new city, exuding vitality. It was completely different from the desolation of the barbarian land. It was a different scene. Get out of the barbarian land. Get out of the barbarian land. A clamor of curses rang out incessantly. Tang Zheng's pupils shrank. He did not understand what was going on. He passed through the crowd and shouted, "Excuse me, what's going on?" Seeing that it was him, the righteous faction looked at him with indescribable disdain and disgust. When he finally came to the door of his house, he found that his people had been surrounded by the righteous faction. They all looked angry. "What's going on?" Tang Jing asked in a low voice. Yi Dingdang could not hold back the anger in her heart. Like a machine gun, she said quickly, "These people are making trouble for no reason. They want to drive us away. They don't know what's good for them." The great ancestor agreed. He said angrily, "We are here to help them, but they want to drive us away. This is ridiculous. We are the righteous faction. How can we live with a group of people with bad morals like you? We naturally want to drive you away." The righteous faction said solemnly. They did not care about the anger of the righteous faction. Tang Zheng frowned and looked at the righteous faction people curiously. Suddenly he saw Wild Dog in the crowd trying to squeeze forward. He shouted, "Wild Dog, what's going on?" Wild Dog's face was red. He squeezed through the crowd and said angrily, This, he stammered as if he had something to say. Tang Zheng scolded, "What's there to be afraid of?" Wild Dog took a deep breath and finally gathered his courage. He said, "They said that Tian Chanzi is a traitor of Kingsaman. He is also an enemy of the righteous faction. Kingsaman is a famous righteous faction. We can't be with such a traitor." "What?" Tang Jing exclaimed in surprise. This group of people had actually come for Tian Chanzi, and because of Tian Chanzi they had vented their anger on them. A reputable sect? How arrogant. Tian Chanzi and Kingsaman's past grievances haven't been clarified yet, and you're already vowing to drive him away. You even want to drive us away. How preposterous. Tang Zheng's tone was heavy. As soon as his voice fell, it was like a huge rock pressing down on their hearts. Wild Dog hurriedly explained, "That's what they think. I don't think so. I also think that it's nonsense. Jumping to conclusions before things are clear is not what a strict righteous path would do." "Wild Dog, who do you think you are? You don't have the right to speak in this matter." Someone snorted, not putting the Wild Dog in his eyes at all. The Wild Dog's face turned redder and redder. He raised his head and said, "I am also a member of the righteous path. Why can't I speak?" "Which sect are you from? You're just a lonely soul." The opposing soldier did not give up and continued to argue. Wild Dog was speechless. This was his weakness and also the eternal pain in his heart. He had lived for so many years and it was not easy for him to cultivate to his current level, but he was a rootless duckweed without any sect or sect. What's so great about being a sect? Since ancient times, how many sects have been destroyed, drowned in the long river of history? A sect is not worth mentioning. Tang Jing retorted. The righteous path was stunned. These words were not a small blow. Everyone looked at Tang Jing more and more, their original thoughts becoming more and more firm. "You're indeed jackals of the same lair as that traitor Tian Chanzi. You actually dare to boast so shamelessly." Someone said angrily. "This kind of person can't be left in the Manhuang. He's a stain on our righteous path. Yes, get out of the Manhuang. Get out of the Manhuang." The shouts were deafening and the crowd was furious. Tang Jing never thought that things would turn out like this. He originally thought that the two sides would be able to merge in a short time, but now they were at each other's throats. Why did all this happen? "Shut up." Tang Jing looked at the agitated crowd and finally could not hold back his anger. He roared and the sound wave was like a shock wave, spreading to every righteous path. The righteous path people felt like their chests had been hammered, and the rest of their words were stuck in their throats. They could not say anything. "I'll leave, they don't have to leave." In complete silence, a voice quietly sounded out. Heaven Monk walked out from behind the crowd with a lonely expression and a look of guilt on his face. "No." Tang Jing stared at Tian Chanzi. "None of us will leave." After saying that, he turned his gaze as if a sharp knife light fell on the righteous path. Looking at the angry crowd, he gradually saw some clues. Why would the righteous path have such a huge conflict? Was it only because of Tian Chanzi? Why would the righteous path be so united? Was there no one organizing or fanning the flames in the dark? There was definitely something fishy going on. Tang Zheng was not a 3-year-old child and had experienced too many schemes. When he calmed down, he immediately discovered that there was something unusual about it. Then who was fanning the flames in the dark? Names flashed through Tang Zheng's mind, and finally, it settled on one name: Bai Mei Daoist. He coldly snorted in his heart and said to himself, "Bai Mei Daoist, I haven't had the time to settle the score with you, but you've already started the war and pointed the spearhead at me." In fact, when he arrived at the Manhuang, he already had thoughts of making a move on Bai Mei Daoist. But Bai Mei Daoist's identity was special, and he was the leader of the righteous path. Without full confidence and concrete evidence, there was no way to make a move on him. In other words, even if he really made a move on Bai Mei Daoist, it would arouse the resentment and conflict of the righteous path. This was not something that Tang Zheng wanted to see. In order to deal with Hao Tianwang and take back Sky Beyond Sky, Tang Zheng had to unite the righteous path. There would be a time when he would need the righteous path in the future. Now that he had offended all the righteous path, this would not do. This strategy of sowing discord had been perfected, but how could Tang Zheng let Bai Mei Daoist's evil plan succeed? His gaze swept through the crowd, but he did not find Bai Mei Daoist's figure. Obviously, he had a guilty conscience and did not dare to come to the scene. When the righteous path heard Tang Zheng's resolute words, they were very emotional. They looked at each other. Although they were frightened of Tang Zheng's terrifying strength, in the end they were all united. Everyone's emotions accumulated together and erupted at the same time, as if they were not afraid of Tang Zheng at all. "Get out of the Manhuang! Get out of the Manhuang!" One after another, angry roars drowned out the crowd. Chapter 1677. Angry roars resounded in everyone's ears. Each and every one of the righteous path disciples had a sinister expression, as if they were about to gang up and attack. "Shut up!" A roar flew out from Tian Chanzi's mouth, like a shockwave, immediately suppressing all the other voices. Tian Chanzi raised his head, staring at the crowd in all directions, and said, "I will leave." Tang Zheng shouted, "No one needs to leave. Once I find the mastermind, this crisis will naturally be easily solved." "Where is the mastermind behind the scenes?" "Yes, that's nonsense." The crowd was enraged, glaring at him. Tang Zheng did not care so much, directly walking out of the crowd, coldly saying, "If you don't believe me, then I will find the mastermind." Seeing is believing. Everywhere he passed, the crowd automatically parted, revealing a path. This was not the righteous path voluntarily letting him pass, but because of a powerful force, they had no choice but to move outwards. Even though the white eyebrows Taoist did not personally come, he was remotely controlling everything. This group of righteous Tao people had his trusted aides, and seeing that Tang Zheng was about to break out, they swore to find the mastermind behind the scenes. This group of people had a guilty conscience, guessing that Tang Zheng was definitely aiming his spear at Bai Mei Daoist. Moreover, Tang Zheng's direction was also Bai Mei Daoist's residence. How could they let him rush there? Thus, this group of people fanned the flames and roared, "Quickly stop him! Wildlands is the territory of the Righteous Path Alliance. How can we allow an outsider to do as he pleases?" Under the temptation, there really were people who stood out. Even though Tang Zheng's strength was strong, but there were so many Righteous Path disciples, they still had enough confidence. "Stop!" Several people roared at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng turned a deaf ear to them. Several people's expression turned cold, revealing a trace of killing intent. Pairs of hands attacked Tang Zheng, extremely fierce. Tang Zheng did not even look, lightly stretching out a finger, pointing towards the void, a wave of energy fluctuating. Bang bang bang. Their attacks collapsed and they were sent flying like cannonballs. He actually dared to attack. This scene enraged even more people, and their gazes towards Tang Zheng were filled with fury. How can we, the righteous path, allow others to humiliate us at our doorstep? The shout ignited the crowd, and all kinds of magical equipment attacked Tang Zheng at the same time. When the old ancestor and the others saw this, they turned pale with fright. Just as they were about to rush over to help, they were stopped by Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai looked at the overbearing righteous faction mockingly and said, "Do they think that having more people means victory? Aha, you think you can bully master with numbers? Wishful thinking." The others were suddenly enlightened. They were worried about Tang Zheng. In fact, it was completely unnecessary. The 7th grade of the Mahayana realm was not a joke. Reality proved that Xiao Bai had a unique vision. When the multicolored magic weapon arrived in front of Tang Zheng, a black hole suddenly appeared. Whoosh! A strong wind blew. All the magic weapons were enveloped by the terrifying suction force of the black hole. Disappear. With a shout, the magic weapons flew into the black hole, disappearing without a trace. At the same time, there was a lot of pure energy in the heaven realm. These magic weapons were completely turned into energy, replenishing the heaven realm. The righteous faction were shocked, each and every one of them were frightened and unable to calm down. They did not understand what was going on, they had actually lost contact with their magic weapons. They looked at each other, obviously in the same situation. There was only one explanation for all of this: the magic weapons were destroyed. But the key was that so many magic weapons were destroyed with a wave of his hand. This was too terrifying, unheard of. The black hole disappeared, otherwise, these righteous faction cultivators would also be sucked in. Tang Zheng looked at the righteous faction indifferently. Wherever his eyes passed, the righteous faction cultivators trembled and subconsciously retreated. Where are our magic weapons? Someone asked with trepidation. Destroyed. Tang Zheng said indifferently. Although they had already guessed this, but when they heard Tang Zheng say it personally, they were all devastated, their faces ashen. Their magic weapons were equivalent to their second life, and were companions that had accompanied them for many years. It was a means to protect their lives. But it was destroyed so easily, so one could imagine how he felt. All destroyed. Someone did not give up and asked. Of course. These two simple words completely cut off everyone's thoughts. My magic weapons. Some people cried, their hearts aching. I spent a lot of money to buy them. What's mine is mine. I worked so hard to get it. Magic weapons were treasures in high demand, especially those that were satisfactory were even rarer. That was why this group of righteous faction cultivators were like this. The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth hooked up into a faint smile. He did not destroy these people's magical equipment on a whim, but with a deeper meaning. He had just arrived and had yet to establish his power, so the righteous faction did not have much fear of him. Since they wanted to chase him away, didn't they just happen to bump into his blade? Then he would take this opportunity to use these people to establish his power and intimidate them. Pairs of red eyes stared fiercely at Tang Zheng, as if they wanted to swallow him alive. Compensate me for my magic weapons. Yes, compensate me for my magic weapons. Tang Zheng disdainfully said, it's just a few magic weapons. Just a few magic weapons? That's dozens of magic weapons. Do you know how hard it is to obtain a magic weapon? Do you know how many materials are needed to refine it? In the outland heavens there were plenty of treasures. However, to the righteous path they were struggling to survive. It was already difficult for them to survive, so how could they have the time and energy to search for treasures to refine treasures? So, for the righteous faction, magic weapons were very precious. Tang Zheng guessed this point but still casually said, I can refine countless magic weapons, so to me, these few magic weapons are not worth mentioning. You know how to refine weapons. Everyone was immediately attracted by these words, sucking in a breath of cold air, half believing and half doubting him. It's just refining weapons, what's so difficult about it? Tang Zheng calmly said. The more he was like this, the more shocked the righteous faction cultivators were. They looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Since you know how to refine weapons, then hurry up and refine a magic weapon and compensate us. Someone aggressively said. The others quickly agreed. That's right, hurry up and refine a magic weapon and compensate us. Tang Zheng lightly smiled and said, you can't wait to chase us away, and you want me to refine a magic weapon for you? Do you think that's possible? This one sentence was a checkmate, causing the righteous faction cultivators to look at each other, not knowing what to do. When Bai Mei Dao's trusted aide saw this, he knew that if this continued, then Bai Mei Dao's plan would be ruined, so he loudly shouted, don't listen to his nonsense, refining weapons is not that easy, he destroyed my magic weapon, and I cannot exist under the same sky with him, at most we will fight. The righteous faction, how can we let him play around? So. Chapter 1678. One by one, the righteous disciples charged towards Tang Zheng without any regard for their own safety. Shua. The hidden profound sword flew out, floating in front of Tang Zheng, emitting a sharp sword light. That extremely simple saint rune lit up with a dazzling light, attracting everyone's attention. The hidden profound sword's aura was too strong, the sword humming unceasingly, as if the hidden profound sword was thirsting for blood, causing people's hair to stand on end. Saint inscriptions. Someone who was knowledgeable immediately recognized the saint inscriptions and exclaimed, that's a saint tool. Cries of surprise rang out from all directions. Saint tools were something that the righteous disciples could only hope to encounter by chance. Even a heaven-grade magic treasure would be fought over, not to mention a saint tool. Everyone was very clear on the power of a saint tool, so when they saw the hidden profound sword aimed at them, they were all stunned. Their footsteps came to an abrupt halt, as if they had suddenly braked, panicking as they stopped in front of Tang Zheng. Even those trusted followers of Bai Mei Daoist did not dare to risk their lives. They subconsciously retreated, not daring to charge forward. Tang Zheng's lips curled in a mocking smile. This group of righteous disciples were not unafraid of death, but in front of a saint tool, they were all scared stiff. Clearly, the saint tool's reputation was even greater than his own, Tang Zheng's. He walked forward step by step, and the righteous disciples retreated step by step. Both sides moved towards Bai Mei Daoist's residence. Xiao Bai looked as if he was watching a good show. He winked at the others, saying, "Everyone, let's go watch a good show." Xiao Bai was an intelligent person. He had also seen Bai Mei Daoist's style of doing things. It was naturally not difficult to guess that all of this was caused by Bai Mei Daoist fanning the flames. Bai Mei Daoist was so daring, Xiao Bai wanted to see what would happen to him in the end. The others were also in high spirits except for Tian Chanzi, who seemed to be unwilling to go. Yi Dingdang had a fiery temper. How could she bear to see Tian Chanzi act coy? She grabbed him and said, "Tian Chanzi, are you still a man? If you are a man, you should face it boldly. Isn't it just stealing the sect leader's woman? So what? Don't you think it's amazing?" "I'm not poaching anyone," Tian Chanzi blurted out. "You didn't steal her? You couldn't have abducted the sect leader's new wife, right? Isn't this considered stealing?" Yi Dingdang asked curiously. "We're in love with each other. The sect leader is the one who came in between us," Tian Chanzi said faintly. Yi Dingdang's eyes lit up. It was as if she had discovered a new continent. There were so many twists and turns in this matter. This was a big piece of gossip. "Then hurry up and tell me what's going on," she impatiently asked. Tian Chanzi froze for a moment, then immediately closed his mouth. Yi Dingdang glared at him with dissatisfaction. Helpless, she could only grab his sleeve and chase after Tang Zheng, not giving Tian Chanzi a chance to slip away. Everything was silent. Only the sound of footsteps could be heard. The righteous faction retreated, Tang Zheng advanced. Between the two was the hidden Xian sword floating in the air. During this time, Bai Mei Daoist's trusted aides fanned the flames a few times, but to no avail. It seemed that the other righteous faction members had also calmed down. Although the righteous faction members were not afraid of death, but that did not mean they did not cherish their own lives. Obviously, Tang Zheng was going after Bai Mei Daoist. Bai Mei Daoist was the leader of the righteous faction. This kind of matter should be handled by him. But he was hiding in the back. What a scandal. As a result, many people in the righteous faction gradually had their own thoughts. Bai Mei Daoist hid in his own house, surrounded by his trusted aides. He could control the righteous faction and sit on the throne of the alliance leader. Naturally, he had a group of trusted aides and there were quite a few of them. "Alliance leader, don't worry. This group of people will definitely be expelled. We have been brewing for so long. How can they withstand the anger of so many people?" Seeing Bai Mei Daoist pacing back and forth with an uneasy expression, his trusted aide hurriedly comforted him. Bai Mei Daoist did not reply, but his heart was heavy. He was not completely confident. After all, he had fought with Tang Zheng before and knew how powerful he was. If Bai Mei Daoist knew about the situation of the battle in Suicide Valley, perhaps he would not have been so reckless and used the strategy of sowing discord. He still underestimated Tang Zheng. He thought that with the power of the righteous faction, with Tian Chanzi as the breakthrough point, they could definitely force these people to leave the savage wasteland. Suddenly, Tian Chanzi turned his head and looked outside. A wave of heavy footsteps approached from afar. The other trusted aides also turned their heads to look, all of them revealing suspicious expressions. "Go out and take a look," Bai Mei Daoist ordered. One of his trusted aides hurriedly went out. After a while, he staggered back in panic and said, "Alliance leader, something big has happened." "What's the matter? Why are you so flustered?" "Tang Zheng is here." "What?" Bai Mei Daoist suddenly stopped in his tracks and stared straight at the door, as if he wanted to see through the wall. "Bai Mei Daoist, are you hiding inside like a turtle? Hurry up and come out." Before Bai Mei Daoist could think of a countermeasure, Tang Zheng's voice had already floated in. These straightforward words immediately made Bai Mei Daoist feel as if he was sitting on pins and needles, not knowing what to do. But there was one thing: he could not hide in the house forever. Otherwise, his prestige as the alliance leader would be gone. Daoist white eyebrows didn't need to look to know that pairs of eyes were uniformly looking at his residence. His every move fell into the eyes of all the people. He went from being active to being passive. This kind of feeling was really unpleasant. Seeing that his trusted aides were all looking at him, waiting for him to make a decision, Bai Mei Daoist frowned. In the end, he gritted his teeth and walked out with large strides. Bang! The door was pushed open and the pairs of eyes became even hotter, completely focused on Bai Mei Daoist. Under the gazes of tens of thousands of people, Bai Mei Daoist calmly swept his gaze over the crowd and asked the obvious, "What's wrong with all of you? Alliance leader, this group of outsiders is in cahoots with traitors. We can't take them in and want them to get out of the wildlands." One of the trusted aides in the crowd cleverly replied. "I see." Bai Mei Daoist pretended to suddenly understand, as if this was the first time he had heard such words and understood this matter. Tang Zheng looked at Bai Mei Daoist's performance with a fake smile. If he had not guessed the ins and outs of the situation, he might have been deceived by Bai Mei Daoist's superb acting. The white-browed Daoist priest looked at Tang Zheng from afar and let out a long sigh. He pretended to be in a difficult position and said, "Since this is a joint decision, then as the alliance leader I can only support it. So everyone, the savage land does not welcome you, please leave." "Ah, have you really made up your mind?" Tang Zheng laughed. Bai Mei Daoist hesitated for a moment and then nodded. "This is everyone's decision. It is not something that I can influence alone." "I'm afraid this is your decision alone, and then you fan the flames and lead others to it." Tang Zheng hit the nail on the head and said bluntly. These words pierced through Bai Mei Daoist's hypocritical face. Bai Mei Daoist's face stiffened. Chapter 1679. As soon as Tang Zheng finished speaking, Bai Mei Daoist's face turned pale. Although he tried his best to hide it, he was still caught by Tang Zheng. "Humph, you have a guilty conscience." Tang Zheng despised him. The others did not understand and looked at the two of them blankly. Bai Mei Daoist immediately calmed himself down, his face darkened and pretended to be heartbroken. "Tang Zheng, I have no enmity with you in the past, why do you have to slander me like this? Our righteous path not only kindly took you in and provided you with a place to stay, but you repay kindness with enmity." Tang Zheng was not surprised by Bai Mei Daoist's reaction, as his reaction was not slow. After all, the other party was the righteous alliance leader, and to be able to sit on this throne he was definitely not an ordinary person. The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth curled up as he sneered in ridicule, and said straightforwardly, "Repay kindness with enmity? This big hat is really skillful. Then let me ask you, where did your son go?" "Life risking." The others all turned their heads to look, but did not find any trace of life risking. Only then did they realize that it had been a while since they had seen life risking. If not for Tang Zheng deliberately reminding them, they would not have noticed this. The corner of Bai Mei Daoist's mouth twitched a few times, and his heart turned cold. He did not know about the Battle of Suicide Valley, so he naturally did not know how far the plan of risking his life had progressed. Hearing Tang Zheng take the initiative to mention risking his life, Bai Mei Daoist realized that he had probably overlooked a serious problem. The other party had definitely seen risking his life or knew his whereabouts. This was troublesome. Didn't this mean that his scheme had been exposed? Bai Mei Daoist was unable to believe this, but relying on his aura that had been cultivated for many years, he did not immediately panic. His mind raced and he immediately said calmly, "We have been living in seclusion in Suicide Valley for so long, and know nothing about the outside world. In order to avoid being blinded, I sent my son to risk his life to investigate the situation outside. He is risking his life for the sake of the righteous path. Is there a problem with that?" A few of his trusted aides cleverly followed up, pretending to be admiring as they said, "The Alliance Master is so far-sighted that he actually sent his own son to investigate. This selfless spirit is unparalleled, we admire him to the extreme." Bai Mei Daoist modestly cupped his hands and said, "This is what I should do as the Alliance leader. If my son doesn't go into the tiger's den, should I let others go into the tiger's den? As the leader of the Righteous Alliance, I, Bai Mei Daoist, would never do such a despicable thing." Once these words were said, there was a lot of discussion, gaining the good impression of many righteous faction members. Many people praised Bai Mei Daoist for his selflessness. Tang Zheng faintly sighed and said, "A person who is despicable is invincible." The sentence is really not wrong. Schemes and machinations can actually make you speak in such a dignified manner, making people feel reverence in their hearts. Your martial arts are truly admirable, admirable." This was obviously sarcastic, even a fool could tell. Bai Mei Daoist's expression became even uglier, and he said in a deep voice, "I treated you guys well, but you guys actually slandered me like this. Then why did your son risk his life to stand together with Hao Tianwang and King Wuling? If it wasn't for him informing us, how could our secret stronghold in the Suicide Valley have been discovered by Hao Tianwang and attacked by him? Tang Jing questioned. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was shocked. Everyone could hear a different kind of deep meaning from these words. Bai Mei Daoist was surprised that Tang Jing actually saw him risk his life and Hao Tianwang together. How was he going to explain this? However, some people heard another meaning, and that was that they had actually been hiding in the Suicide Valley the entire time. Everyone was no stranger to the Suicide Valley. It was a place even more dangerous than the Savage Land. No one would take the risk and step into the Suicide Valley. However, there were actually people hidden inside. In addition, there were also people who noticed that Hao Tianwang had led his troops to attack the Suicide Valley. This was especially frightening. Hao Tianwang had led his troops to attack. How terrifying was that? This group of people had actually escaped unscathed and even reached the Savage Land. Then how did they do it? Just how strong were they to be able to escape from Hao Tianwang's hands? In the end, some people started to worry. Since they had escaped from Hao Tianwang, wouldn't Hao Tianwang also chase them to the Savage Land? Wouldn't they be in danger as well? All of them looked at each other in dismay, each with their own thoughts. A commotion broke out in the crowd and the noise was incessant. Tang Jing looked at Bai Mei Daoist with interest and asked, "How do you explain this?" This voice quickly suppressed the voices of the others. Immediately, there was complete silence as pairs of eyes stared at Bai Mei Daoist. Some people couldn't help but believe in Tang Jing's words. Bai Mei Daoist saw this and knew that he was in great danger. Thus, he took a deep breath and defended himself. "Venomous slander. You said that you saw the sacrifice of life, so you saw it? You want to use this matter to slander me? Dream on. Ask the other Righteous Path people if they agree or not." Many of his trusted aides replied, "No. If he dares to slander the Alliance leader, that is slandering the entire Righteous Path Alliance. This kind of person should be killed by everyone." Yes, everyone can't be fooled by his schemes. The trusted aides stirred up the emotions of the other Righteous Path people, and many of them followed suit. They looked at Tang Jing with unkind gazes. However, Tang Jing was not worried and said, "You want evidence, right? There will definitely be evidence. If you have no proof, then take out the evidence." Bai Mei Daoist felt weak in his heart, but he still put on a strong front and said fiercely, "Evidence?" Tang Jing naturally didn't have any. He pondered for a moment and said, "Give me a bit more time, the evidence will naturally be presented in front of everyone." Bai Mei Daoist was deeply afraid that he would really take out some evidence. Hearing these words, Bai Mei Daoist's heart relaxed and he laughed in disdain. "Haha, so there is no evidence at all. You are just spouting nonsense. This kind of person is not welcomed by the Righteous Path. Since you don't insist on leaving, then we can only make you scram." After pausing for a moment, Bai Mei Daoist slowly flew up and floated in the air. His voice was like a large bell filled with killing intent as he said, "As the Alliance leader of the Righteous Path, I order all the Righteous Path people to expel this person with ulterior motives and his companions. Make them scram out of Man Huang. Man Huang definitely cannot allow this kind of disloyal and ungrateful person to remain in Man Huang." Bai Mei Daoist's words were powerful and resonant, playing the role of a righteous envoy. Under the encouragement of his trusted aides, many of the Righteous Path people were shaken. Although there were some who doubted Bai Mei Daoist, but after all, one was a person who had only known each other for a short period of time, while the other was someone who knew each other very well. Moreover, he was the Alliance leader chosen by all the Righteous Path people, so it went without saying which side they would stand on. Faced with the ultimate choice, the Righteous Path people made their own choice. Pairs of eyes were fixed on Tang Jing's face. Anger and killing intent gradually surged in their eyes. Tang Jing had become the target of public criticism. To read the latest novel, please visit Chapter 1680. The good faction had a large number of people. Almost all of them had gathered here. Other than the people who had their treasures destroyed by Tang Jing, there were others who had rushed over after hearing the news. This group of people stared at Tang Jing covetously, their auras surging. Xiao Bai and the others could no longer sit idly by, they quickly gathered behind Tang Jing, becoming his solid backing, facing the good faction without fear. Xiao Bai looked at the good faction in ridicule. Raising his voice, he said, "Bullying us with numbers? My master is not alone. If you want to bully him, you have to ask for our permission first." Yi Ding Dang and the others responded, Yes, you have to ask for our permission first. Although they had fewer people, their aura was not weak at all, in fact they were faintly pressuring the good faction. Kill? The good faction was not to be trifled with. They finally burst out with a heaven-shaking roar, a group of people charging out. Charge! Xiao Bai gave the order, taking the lead, he rushed to the front, the others followed his footsteps, charging at the enemy as fast as lightning. The two forces charged at each other without regard for their own safety. The hard rocks of the wildlands shook as if there was an earthquake. Boom! Both sides finally clashed. The treasures were the first to attack, fighting fiercely, their auras fluctuating like the wind and clouds changing color. Boom boom boom. The mountains shook, huge rocks fell from above. This place that the good faction had worked so hard to open up seemed to be in danger of collapsing. Only two people did not move, one was Tang Zheng, the other was Bai Mei Daoist. As if they were not involved, they did not move in between the two torrents. However, the two pairs of eyes looked at each other across the air, as if there was a strong attractive force, firmly attracting these two pairs of eyes. Bai Mei Daoist was also at the Grand Ascension stage. During his battle with Tang Zheng, Bai Mei Daoist was only at the second stage of the Grand Ascension stage, and after that incident, he had expended many precious materials to finally break through his shackles and reach the third stage of the Grand Ascension stage. The White Eyebrows Daoist was very pleased with his breakthrough. One had to know that this was almost impossible, but he had done it. Not only that, but his Dharma treasure had also been upgraded. In the past, his horsetail whisk was also a saint artifact, but it had just reached the saint artifact grade. The saint inscriptions on it were messy and did not have a simple sense of beauty. In the fierce battle with Tang Zheng, the horsetail whisk had been greatly damaged. Fortunately, Bai Mei Daoist was also good at refining tools, so he had spent a lot of effort and collected the materials with great difficulty. Because of his breakthrough in cultivation, he had forged a new horsetail whisk. The quality of the horsetail whisk had also been upgraded. The saint inscriptions on it were no longer messy and had been simplified by a lot. The biggest change was that the whisk was no longer white but blood red, which was very dazzling. A faint smell of blood drifted out from the horsetail whisk. Therefore, after Bai Mei Daoist could not withstand the pressure exerted by Tang Zheng's eyes, the blood-red horsetail whisk appeared in his hand with a swish. Tang Zheng stared at the horsetail whisk and his pupils shrank slightly as he said meaningfully, "Your horsetail whisk contains too much of the smell of blood. I'm afraid it's not an honorable refining method." Tang Zheng was a master refiner, so he naturally saw the clues at a glance. His voice was not loud, but it accurately entered Bai Mei Daoist's ears. This sentence was particularly harsh and he could not help but frown. Chasing the wind and moon. Bai Mei Daoist roared and a dazzling blood-red light shot out from the horsetail whisk. In the blink of an eye, it flew in front of Tang Zheng, and its momentum was particularly fierce. Tang Zheng had experienced this move before. Obviously it was more powerful than last time, but it was less of a threat to Tang Zheng. Bai Mei Daoist's cultivation had increased by 1 level, but Tang Zheng's cultivation had increased by 3 levels compared to last time. The difference in strength was like heaven and earth. Buzz. The hidden profound sword hummed softly, and the sword light intercepted the blood-red light. A gust of wind fiercely hit the hidden profound sword, but it was immediately shattered by the sharp hidden profound sword. The hidden profound sword flew out from Tang Zheng's hand and stabbed straight at Bai Mei Daoist. Subduing the dragon and tiger. Erase the universe. The horsetail whisk changed attacking moves and the power suddenly increased. However, Tang Zheng was still very calm, because he had experienced all of these moves before and knew them very well. Therefore, the mysterious hidden sword shot out 2 sword lights in the air, easily breaking through the 2 attacks of the White Eyebrows Daoist. Bai Mei Daoist's face turned pale. He could not see through Tang Zheng's cultivation, so he did not know the difference between the two. He thought that after his strength increased he would not be much weaker than Tang Zheng. However, through these 2 moves he finally realized that he must have a new attacking move to maybe beat Tang Zheng. He gritted his teeth and smiled coldly. "Then I'll let you have a taste of my new move, blood over the world." Puff. The White Eyebrows Daoist priest spat out a mouthful of blood onto the horsetail whisk. The blood-red light of the horsetail whisk shone brightly, and an overwhelming smell of blood surged out, like the changing dark clouds in the sky. The smell of blood kept rolling, covering the horsetail whisk. Outsiders could not see it, but the dust of the horsetail whisk was rolling in the smell of blood, stirring up the aura of this space, which made it like a bloody cloud and attacked Tang Zheng fiercely. Tang Zheng disdainfully curled his lips and said, "Not worth mentioning." The hidden profound sword turned into 2, then 4, and finally thousands of them and shot into the bloody cloud. Buff, 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 buff. A series of cracking sounds rang out incessantly. Finally, with a boom, the blood-red cloud exploded. Broken strands of dust drifted down like catkins from a willow tree. Bai Mei Daoist spat out another mouthful of blood, and his face became extremely pale. The horsetail whisk returned to his hand, but half of the dust was broken. Tang Jing walked step by step toward Bai Mei Daoist, and Bai Mei Daoist retreated in panic. In the end, he leaned against the wall and retired from the army. The hidden profound sword approached step by step, and the sharp sword light shone on Bai Mei Daoist's face. Bai Mei Daoist's pale face became more and more clear. Bai Mei Daoist was defeated. Although it was only a short time, he was defeated and thoroughly defeated, even more than last time. He could not understand why he was defeated so miserably, even though his cultivation had increased. He clenched his teeth, and the voice of hatred squeezed out from between his teeth. He asked, "Why are you so powerful?" Tang Jing smiled faintly. "You are improving and so am I. Moreover, the speed of my improvement is far from what you can compare to." This sentence was like a heavy hammer, fiercely pounding on his chest. He choked a mouthful of blood in his throat and almost died. But he did not give up. His eyes emitted a vicious light, and the horsetail whisk was thrust into the ground, as if cutting tofu, easily inserted into the hard rock ground. Bai Mei Daoist shouted himself hoarse as if using all the strength in his body and roared, "Big Dipper 6 directions formation." Bang, bang, bang. A series of loud noises came from the room behind him. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1681. With a loud sound, several tall figures broke through the wall and appeared in front of everyone. Tang Jing immediately locked onto these people and revealed an astonished expression. This was because he saw a problem with this group of people. These people actually had no vitality, as if they were walking corpses. This made Tang Jing involuntarily recall the puppet technique. Back then Huang Xiang was also like this. "Puppets?" Tang Jing said in a deep voice, not understanding Bai Mei Daoist's plan. Hearing the word puppets, Bai Mei Daoist was not surprised. He sternly stared at Tang Jing and growled, "Big Dipper 6 directions formation." Tang Jing's brows jumped. He had seen the power of this formation before. Bai Mei Daoist was using the same trick again. Did he think that the Big Dipper 6 directions formation could defeat him? The puppets were already standing in a special position. They all raised their hands and rays of light shot out from their hands, gathering together in midair. An aura of death permeated the air, instantly enveloping this space. Tang Jing's expression became serious. "Bai Mei Daoist, as the Righteous Alliance leader, you keep saying that you adhere to the Righteous Path's principles, but does your Big Dipper 6 directions formation meet the Righteous Path standards?" Bai Mei Daoist coldly snorted and avoided answering. He only said with a murderous aura, "To kill traitors like you, I must use thunderous methods." "Ah, what a thunderous method. Then let's see whose method is better." Tang Jing did not waste words with him and directly used strength to speak. It would not be too late to talk after defeating him. The Big Dipper 6 directions formation was already prepared. The puppet's energy was completely drawn out and gathered in midair, forming a ball of light. However, this ball of light was completely red and emitted an aura of death. Whoosh! The ball of light flew to the top of Daoist Whitebrow's head, and rushed into his body as if he had been enlightened. In the next second, Bai Mei Daoist's body trembled as he bathed in the red light. His entire body turned blood red, and his eyes flickered with a bewitching red light. The horsetail whisk let out a sharp sound, and the blood-red strands of the whisk expanded in the wind. Soon they were several meters long like slender whips. Whoosh! The long whips swam, flying towards Tang Jing, thousands and thousands of threads, continuous and unending. Hidden Mystic Sword slash. Tang Jing roared, and the hidden sword flew out like a bolt of lightning, slashing at the threads of dust. However, the threads of dust did not break, as if they were extremely tough and bounced back. The hidden mystic sword quickly rebounded. This attack had no effect. Tang Jing was slightly stunned. He didn't expect Bai Mei Daoist's attack to be so strong. The drifting strands of dust gave him a strange feeling. Bai Mei Daoist laughed complacently, as if victory was already in his grasp. Everyone else saw this scene. The road had turned around and it was completely different from before. No one expected that Bai Mei Daoist, who had suffered a crushing defeat, would be so powerful again. However, everyone's attention was not limited to this. Many people looked at the puppets in horror and cried out, "Alliance leader, what did you do to them?" Obviously they were more concerned about the puppets than Bai Mei Daoist. It turned out that those puppets were the best of the best from each sect. They had profound strength and were highly respected. Most of them were protectors and elders of the sect. Back then, Bai Mei Daoist used his identity as the alliance leader to gather these people to form the Heavenly Dipper Six Directions formation. This was to gather the strength of the strong and then become stronger. This was equivalent to gathering the top power of each sect. Its power was indeed extraordinary and it killed many enemies. But now these people had become puppets. This was a scene that the people of these sects did not want to see. Their own sect's elders and protectors had been turned into puppets. Who could accept this cruel reality? Someone came to a realization and roared angrily, "Bai Mei Daoist, explain clearly what's going on?" Yes, how did our elders become puppets? Who turned our protectors into puppets? Angry voices drowned out the sounds of the battle. Many sects even retreated, giving up on the fierce battle with their opponents. For a moment, the battle was not as intense as before. Apart from Bai Mei Daoist's trusted aides and some stubborn fellows, everyone else had given up on fighting. Their eyes were firmly locked on Bai Mei Daoist. Without these people restraining them, how could Bai Mei Daoist's trusted aides be a match for the ancestor and the others? The battle was quickly decided. This group of people was controlled and couldn't move. They could only watch helplessly as their opponent attacked them. Xiao Bai walked in a circle in front of them and jokingly said, "You people are really stubborn. If you walk down a dark path, then you will be the leader of your alliance. Look at his actions. What's the difference between him and the demons? Is it worth it for you to use your lives to protect him?" Bai Mei Daoist's hair was disheveled and his entire body was shrouded in red light. He looked like a devil, completely different from his previous transcendent appearance. "Bai Mei Daoist, you still haven't answered our question. Why are you so deranged as to turn them into puppets?" Seeing that Bai Mei Daoist still hadn't answered, some people couldn't hold back and loudly questioned him. The art of puppetry was also a spell of the righteous Tao, but the people who were turned into puppets were all vicious and evil people, not people who should be on their side. Bai Mei Daoist's actions had violated a great taboo. Bai Mei Daoist naturally heard these questions. In order to protect his position, he had taken such a great risk and turned his former allies into puppets. This was even crueler than killing them. Xiao Bai jokingly said, "If you don't answer, then you clearly have a guilty conscience. For the sake of your own selfish desires, you actually killed your allies. Is this still the alliance leader you want?" There was complete silence and quite a few people lowered their heads. Those trusted aides also seemed to have lost their souls and didn't dare to jump around. Xiao Bai continued, "As the alliance leader, Bai Mei Daoist committed such a heinous crime. Thus he is the true traitor of the righteous Tao and everyone's enemy. Now my master will seek justice for everyone and take down this traitor and public enemy." Wild Dog had been on Tang Zheng's side from the beginning and had even switched sides and fought fiercely with the righteous Tao for a long time. He looked worriedly at the unpredictable Big Dipper Six Directions True Formation and said, "Bai Mei Daoist has used the art of puppetry. The Big Dipper Six Directions True Formation has changed and is extremely dangerous." Xiao Bai waved his hand and said carelessly, "So what if he's powerful? He's still no match for my master. If you don't believe me, just wait and see." Xiao Bai was also very clear that Tang Jing needed to establish his might in front of the righteous Tao. Bai Mei Daoist had given him this opportunity. If he didn't make good use of it, wouldn't it be a waste? The others were skeptical. After all, they hadn't fully experienced Tang Zheng's strength. Looking at the completely different Bai Mei Daoist now, many people were uncertain. Chapter 1682. The White Eyebrows Daoist was shrouded in a red light as he fiercely attacked Tang Zheng. Tens of thousands of strands of dust flew towards Tang Zheng like poisonous snakes spitting out their tongues. Hidden sword cut. Tang Zheng did not use any powerful moves at all. He just roared and slashed out with his sword. Bai Mei Daoist disdainfully raised the corner of his mouth. The horsetail whisk was incomparably tough. How could it be cut so easily? Wasn't that the best proof? He concentrated all his power and poured it into the horsetail whisk. Every whisker had a terrifying lethality. The overwhelming aura of death surged out with great momentum. The sharp sword light of the hidden sword finally fell on the whiskers. Clang. However, the scene from before did not occur. The tenacious strands of hair could not stop the hidden sword of Xian. Like crushing dry weeds, they all broke apart amidst the crisp sound. The hidden sword went straight in as fast as lightning. Before Bai Mei Daoist could react, it was already at his forehead. Bai Mei Daoist was defeated. He was completely defeated. Bai Mei Daoist's eyes showed a look of disbelief. He could not understand how he was defeated like this. He tried to resist again, but the terrifying aura of the hidden sword dispelled his idea. He was sure that as long as he made the slightest move, the hidden sword could directly penetrate his forehead and kill him on the spot. He twisted his neck with difficulty and stared at Tang Jing, who was not far away. He asked in horror, "How could this be?" Tang Jing knew what the other party wanted to ask. He smiled faintly and said, "A mere third stage of the Mahayana stage dares to compete with me, a seventh stage of the Mahayana stage. Aha, I just wanted to see how many tricks you have. I didn't want to kill you immediately. I didn't expect you to have the illusion that you can defeat me. I don't know where your confidence comes from." Tang Jing's voice was very harsh. It was as if he could hear the sound of Bai Mei Daoist's heart breaking. He completely destroyed the fluke in the line of defense in his heart. When the others heard the word seventh stage of the Mahayana stage, they all showed a look of horror. They scratched their heads and did not expect Tang Jing's cultivation to be so strong. One by one, the people who originally provoked Tang Jing shrank their necks. They felt a chill on their backs. They thought that they were lucky. They had just walked through the gates of hell and did not know it. With Tang Jing's cultivation, their provocation was child's play. If he insisted on attacking, most of them would have no chance to resist and then quietly reach the end of their lives. However, Tang Jing did not do so and only destroyed their magical equipment. This was already showing mercy. Her original resentment towards Tang Jing for destroying her magical equipment disappeared like smoke in thin air, leaving only the feeling of surviving a calamity in her heart. Tang Jing ignored the others. He just stared at Bai Mei Daoist and said, "Your methods are really powerful. You killed your allies. Do you still have the qualifications to sit in the position of the Righteous Alliance leader?" Bai Mei Daoist stubbornly raised his head. He was not ashamed. Instead, he said proudly, "This is my method. How can it be your turn to criticize? Moreover, if you didn't force me step by step, why would I take such a risk?" Tang Jing laughed involuntarily. "Could it be that you have angered everyone and done such a heinous thing as my fault?" Bai Mei Daoist said without hesitation, "Of course. Without your threat, why would I do this? Everyone, think about it from my point of view. If it was you, wouldn't you do the same?" Bai Mei Daoist angrily glared. His gaze swept over everyone. Many people lowered their heads in shame. It seemed that they really had the same thoughts as him. But most people still angrily glared at him. They were not fooled by his words. "Bai Mei Daoist, not only are your methods despicable, you are also good at talking. We are all people with a bottom line. Even in the face of danger, we will not harm our allies." Tang Jing hit the nail on the head. Many people agreed and said with a common hatred, "Yes, we will not be as cruel as you. Bai Mei Daoist, you are not fit to be the Righteous Alliance leader. You have shamed the entire righteous path. You are the true traitor of the righteous path. Bai Mei Daoist, you are the traitor. You have shamed the righteous path." Accusations rang out in unison. "A bunch of hypocrites." Bai Mei Daoist spat out a mouthful of saliva and said disdainfully, "You have an excuse for this matter and think that I am a threat to you. What about the other matter? You sent your son to inform Hao Tianwang and then asked him to lead an army to attack Suicide Valley. What is this act of helping the tyrant?" Tang Jing asked. The others fell into deep thought when they heard this. Previously they did not believe these words, but at this moment they gradually began to believe them. Bai Mei Daoist's expression kept changing. He made a final struggle and said, "I didn't send my son to inform you. You are framing me." Tang Jing's heart trembled. Bai Mei Daoist was truly a smart person. Even now he had not completely lost his mind. He did not admit to this matter because he knew very well that this matter could not be compared to the matter of the puppet. If the matter of him colluding with Hao Tianwang was confirmed, then he really would not have a chance to turn the situation around, nor would he have any excuse. Then he would really have no way out. Furthermore, he knew that if Tang Jing could not produce any concrete evidence, he could deny it. At the very least, no one else would have anything to say. He was walking on a tightrope, gambling on the last bit of luck. "You won't cry until you see the coffin. Bai Mei Daoist, your wishful thinking is wrong." Tang Jing sneered. Bai Mei Daoist looked at Tang Jing mockingly. He had made up his mind that he did not have any concrete evidence, so he was fearless. Tang Zheng's gaze drifted into the distance. With a move of his divine sense, he sensed a few familiar auras. With a thought, he came up with an idea and said, "Bai Mei Daoist, didn't you say that I don't have any evidence? Actually, the evidence is very simple. The evidence is your son, Sharon." Bai Mei Daoist thought that Sharon was definitely with Hao Tianwang. No matter how powerful Tang Zheng was, it was impossible for him to snatch Sharon from Hao Tianwang. Thus, Bai Mei Daoist disdainfully said, "Everything depends on your mouth. The key is the evidence. You said that my son is the evidence, then you should find him." Bai Mei Daoist was certain that Tang Zheng could not find his son, Sharon, so he was fearless and incomparably arrogant. The corner of his mouth hooked up in a ridiculing smile that was particularly dazzling. Tang Zheng smiled faintly and said, "Naturally I will find him. However, if he really stands in front of you, I'm afraid you'll be shocked. However, at that time you won't have any excuses." Bai Mei Daoist obviously did not believe him and sneered. Tang Zheng's gaze drifted into the distance. 3 figures flew in from the entrance of the Wildlands underground space. When Tang Zheng saw one of them clearly, his eyes lit up and the smile on the corner of his mouth became more and more intense. Everyone looked at Tang Zheng, and when they saw the change in his expression, they were confused. Many of the smart people followed his gaze, and when they saw the scene at the entrance, all of them trembled and turned pale with fright. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1683. The 3 figures finally approached. There were actually 2 people escorting a person. When everyone saw the face of the person being escorted, they all revealed expressions of disbelief. Bai Mei Daoist also saw this person, and his face instantly turned ashen. His mouth was wide open and he looked extremely terrified. "Lifesaver!" The crowd cried out in alarm. The person being escorted was actually Bai Mei Daoist's son. Lifesaver, wasn't that the so-called evidence that Tang Zheng was talking about? Bai Mei Daoist swore that it was impossible for Tang Zheng to find Lifesaver, but he didn't expect to be slapped in the face in the blink of an eye. A smile surfaced on the corner of Tang Zheng's mouth, and he looked at the 2 people beside him with praise in his eyes. These 2 people were Yi Yuan and Bewildering Mist. Tang Zheng had long wanted to deal with Bai Mei Daoist, but he knew that Bai Mei Daoist's position was not ordinary, and that if he wanted to shake him, he would need real evidence. And the only evidence was to sacrifice his life. Thus, he sent out Yi Yuan and Bewildering Mist, ignoring the danger, to guard the outskirts of the savage wasteland, waiting for the rabbit. This was because they believed that in the Battle of the Suicide Valley, Hao Tianwang would definitely not let him have an easy time. He would definitely escape back to the savage wasteland without stopping, so he would take the opportunity to capture him. Wouldn't that mean that he would have ready-made evidence? Tang Zheng's prediction was godly. Yi Yuan and Bewildering Mist were indeed waiting for Lifesaver at the edge of the savage wasteland. After a bitter battle, how could Lifesaver be a match for the 2 of them? He could only be captured. Tang Zheng's heart was set. He stared at Bai Mei Daoist aggressively and asked, "Bai Mei Daoist, didn't you say that I didn't have any evidence? Now that the evidence is right in front of you, what else do you have to say?" Bai Mei Daoist clenched his teeth and remained silent. It seemed that he could not find a suitable excuse. Everyone looked at Bai Mei Daoist in unison. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Bai Mei Daoist's expression changed again and again. He glared hatefully at Geming. The feeling of being slapped in the face by his own son was really unpleasant. Someone from the righteous faction was furious and questioned, "Bai Mei Daoist, do you have anything else to say?" "That's right. Hurry up and tell me what's going on." Bai Mei Daoist racked his brains, but there was nothing he could do. Tang Zheng knew that Bai Mei Daoist hadn't really admitted defeat yet. He was still making a last-ditch struggle. Thus, he walked in front of Geming and said, "Bai Mei Daoist, since you don't want to speak, let's listen to what your son has to say." Yi Yuan nodded towards Tang Zheng, pushed Geming and urged, "Obediently tell us everything you've done, and let everyone know of your despicable actions." Geming's lips trembled slightly as he looked at Bai Mei Daoist in fear. He seemed to be extremely afraid, but he quickly lowered his head, not daring to look at him. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he finally opened his mouth and said slowly, "I was ordered by my father to inform Hao Tianwang and let them attack the Suicide Valley." His words were concise and to the point, but it was like a sharp arrow that pierced into Bai Mei Daoist's heart. Bai Mei Daoist was stunned. He never thought that he would be betrayed by his son, risking his life to reveal all the inside information so neatly. Unfilial son. Bai Mei Daoist's anger accumulated in his chest, and he let out a loud roar that sounded like a thunderclap. Ming bent down in shame as if he was about to sink into the dust, not daring to face his father. He silently said in his heart, "Father, don't blame me. If I don't tell the truth, then I'm dead for sure." Yi Yuan had warned him earlier that if he didn't reveal the truth, he would die without a doubt. Before he lost his life, he did not know the immensity of the heavens and the earth. He still had the thought of competing with Tang Zheng, but ever since he witnessed the battle of the Suicide Valley with his own eyes, this thought disappeared into thin air. He no longer dared to have such thoughts because Tang Zheng was too strong, so strong that his heart was like dead ashes. He understood that even with his father, he had no hope of winning. He might as well tell the truth and admit everything in exchange for his life. He also knew that this would cause a fatal blow to his father, but in order to survive, he couldn't care less. In the face of great calamity, everyone flew separately. This was the cruel reality. Bai Mei Daoist stared hatefully at Ming. How could he not understand his intentions? He angrily cursed unfilial son, but everything was to no avail. Everyone sighed in their hearts. Bai Mei Daoist's methods were impressive, but they never thought that he would have such a disappointing son. This was the outcome of Bai Mei Daoist. Many people felt a sense of satisfaction as if they had gotten their revenge. Bai Mei Daoist, you finally have nothing to say now, right? As the leader of the righteous path, you have commanded so many righteous paths, but I never thought that you would actually collude with Hao Tianwang and inform him. You are the true traitor of the righteous path. The crowd was furious and someone vehemently criticized him. Yes, you are the biggest traitor. You have actually hidden for so long. Today you have finally been exposed in front of everyone. Obediently surrender and accept your punishment. Alliance leader has become a traitor, so he should be punished even more. What should he do? Death. Echoing one another, the righteous path that had long been drowned in anger condemned Bai Mei Daoist. When the word death came out, Bai Mei Daoist was not surprised at all. Because he had long been clear that once his evil intentions were exposed, he would definitely be punished with death. There was no other possibility. It was precisely because of this that he had been quibbling all this time. He would not shed tears until he saw the coffin. He slowly raised his head, his eyes filled with killing intent. An aura of death spread out from his body. He gnashed his teeth and hysterically said, "I am the leader of the righteous path. What qualifications do you have to sentence me to death? Only I can judge the crimes of others, no one can sentence me to death. You all stand on Tang Zheng's side and intend to kill me. Then I will kill you all first." As soon as his voice fell, an intense killing intent spread out and enveloped the nearest righteous path people. How could these people's strength be Bai Mei Daoist's opponent? They immediately bled from their 7 orifices and fell to the ground dead. The others were all enraged. "Bai Mei Daoist, even at death's door you still dare to be so cruel. Kill him. Kill him." The crowd was enraged. Waves of shouts swept out like a tide, and the momentum was tremendous. Bai Mei Daoist also roared, "Kill." Those puppets moved. They quickly attacked the surrounding righteous path people. Many of them were from their sects when they were alive. Several righteous path people did not even have time to react before they received a fatal blow and died on the spot. Everyone was stunned. Cries of alarm sounded out. "Bai Mei Daoist, you are too despicable. You actually ordered them to kill each other." Bai Mei Daoist not only refined these people into puppets, he also ordered them to kill their former sect members. This was even more despicable than refining them into puppets. Bai Mei Daoist coldly snorted and said, "You all betrayed the alliance leader. That is not the righteous path. What wrong is there in killing you all? He has already turned into a demon. Everyone, do not be merciful. Kill this thief with your own hands and take revenge for our dead sect members." Everyone loudly shouted, "Kill this thief with your own hands." Shouts filled with righteous indignation resounded through the clouds. To read a novel, please visit Chapter 1684. All of the righteous faction's murderous aura surged as they charged towards Bai Mei Daoist, and he immediately fell into a sea of people's war. There was no need for Tang Zheng to make a move. These people wished they could kill him with their own hands. Those few puppets could only kill instinctively, and in the end they were not a match for so many people, and were quickly subdued, while Bai Mei Daoist's murderous aura surged, and was much more powerful than the puppets. Just as the righteous faction's people approached him, they died on the spot. However, the other righteous faction's people were like a tide, advancing wave after wave, not fearing death at all, as if they would not give up until they killed Bai Mei Daoist. The righteous faction's people were either injured or killed, but Bai Mei Daoist was getting braver as he fought. Tang Jing slightly frowned. This situation was not good. If the righteous faction's people died, it would be Tang Jing's loss, because the righteous faction's people were still very useful to him. You still dare to resist stubbornly, surrender without a fight. Tang Jing roared righteously. His body was like a swan, flying in front of Bai Mei Daoist, and the other righteous faction's people were immediately forced far away by his aura, unable to get close to Bai Mei Daoist, and naturally their lives were saved. Tang Jing directly faced Bai Mei Daoist, revealing a look of disdain. Bai Mei Daoist stared at Tang Jing with fire in his eyes, and said hysterically, "Tang Jing, if not for you I would not have reached this stage today. All of this is because of you. Go die." Whoosh. The horsetail whisk once again expanded, and thousands of strands of whisk attacked as fast as lightning. Tang Jing stretched out his finger and lightly tapped the air. The hidden mystic sword appeared out of thin air. Following the direction of his finger, it swiftly chopped down. Boom. In the midst of the loud sound, the horsetail whisk exploded, turning into pieces, no longer able to grow strands of whisk. This treasure was completely destroyed. The hidden mystic sword's momentum did not decrease, and continued forward, instantly arriving in front of Bai Mei Daoist. A sharp sword aura flew into his body. His entire body trembled as if he had been immobilized and could no longer move. The originally berserk aura vanished like smoke in thin air, completely silenced. With just one move, the killing Bai Mei Daoist was defeated. The other people's gazes towards Tang Jing changed again and again, in their hearts. Too powerful. Tang Jing lightly clapped his fingers, and the hidden profound sword flew back into his body. He walked in front of the White Eyebrows Daoist, and although the White Eyebrows Daoist hated him to death, he could only stare at him and roar in anger. "Tang Jing, what did you do to me?" "Bai Mei Daoist, 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 Bai Mei Daoist Da. What are you going to do?" Bai Mei Daoist's face was filled with fear and quickly asked. Tang Jing raised the corner of his mouth, but did not answer his question. But then Bai Mei Daoist's body made a loud sound, and Bai Mei Daoist madly screamed. "Ah!" The screams resounded through the clouds, causing the others to be moved, but not many people pitied him. Instead, they felt very carefree and very relieved. But in their hearts, they were a little curious. What did Tang Jing do to Bai Mei Daoist to make him suffer so much? You destroyed my Yuanying." After a long time, Bai Mei Daoist finally had the strength to tell the truth, but he no longer had the strength to shout. He was like a dead dog. When the others heard this, their hearts turned cold and they all looked at Tang Jing. He actually destroyed Bai Mei Daoist's Yuanying. To a cultivator, the Yuanying was the most fundamental. It was the source of all strength, and when the Yuanying was destroyed, their martial arts would naturally disappear. Bai Mei Daoist relied on his martial arts to strut around, so Tang Jing destroyed his martial arts, making him lose his most precious thing, and then he would have nothing left. After the sword light destroyed the Yuanying, Bai Mei Daoist once again regained his freedom, but his body was weak, and he fell to the ground like a dead shrimp. He was no longer a threat. The others did not pity him. All of this was his own fault, and he could not blame anyone else. Tang Jing took a step back and said, "I'll leave him to you. You can do whatever you want with him." The righteous faction once again surrounded Bai Mei Daoist. Bai Mei Daoist raised his head, fiercely looked around and said, "You are a group of traitors. I am the leader of the righteous faction, but you listen to the slanderous words of an outsider. Shut up." A roar rang out, interrupting Daoist White Brow's attempt to distort the truth. "You still have the face to talk about others? You are the most despicable and shameless. How do we deal with him? Didn't we just say it? His actions are all capital crimes. He will die without a doubt. He will die without a doubt." The crowd did not let him go just because his Yuanying was destroyed. Since he was already sentenced to death, then he must be executed to the end. The righteous faction looked at each other, and as if their hearts were in sync, they began to circulate their martial arts. Seeing this scene, Bai Mei Daoist was still in shock and hurriedly said, "I already have no Yuanying. You still want to kill me?" No one answered him. But one by one, the treasured weapons flew up from the righteous path and flew towards Bai Mei Daoist. The blazing light enveloped Bai Mei Daoist and he screamed in despair. Suddenly the scream stopped abruptly. An earth-shattering boom erupted from the blazing light. Then, one by one, the magic treasures flew back into the hands of their respective owners. The light gradually dissipated, and Bai Mei Daoist's figure could no longer be seen. In that powerful attack, not even his bones were left. The righteous faction shared a common enemy, and could not help but heave a sigh of relief. This was revenge for their dead comrades. Seeing his father's fate, Gao Ming was so scared that his entire body went limp. He fell to the ground softly. He wasn't sad for his father, but he was completely frightened. He grieved for his father's death and his heart was anxious. He didn't know what his fate would be. He raised his head in shock, looked at Yi Yuan and said while trembling with fear, "I have already done everything you asked for. Now can you let me go?" How could Yi Yuan dare to let go of his life? He looked towards Tang Jing. Tang Jing understood and said, "You have committed many evil deeds and secretly colluded with the enemy. You want to escape this calamity just like that? Do you really think that everyone is a fool?" "Ah," Shi Ming screamed and stammered, "but you clearly promised me that once I told you the truth, you would let me live. Then you should first ask them if they agree." Tang Jing pointed at Xiao Bai and the others. Xiao Bai took the hint and stepped forward. The ancestor and the others also glared at Dao Sheng with righteous indignation. If it wasn't for him informing them, the Suicide Valley wouldn't have been destroyed, and they wouldn't have had to flee to the wilderness. "Of course I won't." Xiao Bai closed in on Dao Sheng, revealing his killing intent. With so many of his subordinates dead and injured, how could he let Dao Sheng off so easily? "You all went back on your word." Risking his life shouted. "Haha, is there a need to talk about credibility with people like you who have no bottom line?" Xiao Bai asked disdainfully. Shi Ming had nothing to say in response. He had regretted countless things, but this time, it was finally his turn to suffer the consequences of his own actions. "Yes, kill him. He is also a traitor of the righteous path." Seeing this, the other righteous path members all shouted out in unison, their killing intent soaring into the clouds. "As everyone wishes." Xiao Bai shouted loudly, and with a flick of his finger, a ball of flame emerged from his fingertip, quickly changing and turning into a ball of flame that landed on Dao Sheng's body. Chapter 1685. 1 Second to Remember, wonderful novel to read at any time. The white eyebrows movement and the sacrificing one's life. Everybody felt as if a mouthful of resentment had been released from their chests and abdomens. Gradually they calmed down, their mood also calmed down. What should they do next? This thought surfaced in everyone's mind. They looked at each other in dismay and began to whisper to each other. "Silence!" Xiao Bai suddenly roared loudly. Everyone turned their heads and looked at Xiao Bai with a complicated expression. Xiao Bai said in a clear voice, "Now let me invite my master to speak." After saying that, he took the initiative to take a step back, exposing Tang Jing to everyone. Tang Jing coughed dryly, cleared his throat and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, as the leader of the Righteous Alliance, Bai Mei Daoist knowingly broke the law and secretly colluded with the enemy. Now that he has been executed, do you think this matter is over?" Everyone's heart trembled, not understanding the meaning of Tang Jing's words. "This is only the beginning." Tang Jing said decisively, "Bai Mei Daoist colluded with Hao Tianwang, and Hao Tianwang sent troops to attack the Suicide Valley and returned in defeat. How do you think Hao Tianwang will vent his anger?" Everyone revealed a suspicious expression and became even more confused. All of this is because of Bai Mei Daoist, so Hao Tianwang will naturally vent his anger on him. Bai Mei Daoist and you are all of the same path, so will Hao Tianwang let you go? The powerful question made everyone speechless. After careful consideration, they realized that Tang Jing was not an alarmist, and Hao Tianwang was very likely to vent his anger on them. Bai Mei Daoist is dead, then what should we do? Someone could not hold back and asked loudly. Tang Jing was waiting for this question. He had to make the righteous path worry about their own survival so that he could intervene. "Do you have the confidence to fight against Hao Tianwang?" Tang Jing was not in a hurry to answer, but threw out another question. The righteous path looked at each other. No one had the courage or confidence to say that they could fight against Hao Tianwang, because they really did not have the strength. If you don't have the strength to fight against Hao Tianwang, then there is only one result: death. Tang Jing said casually. The word death made everyone's hair stand on end and their faces turned pale. It was as if Hao Tianwang had already arrived in front of them and death was right in front of them. Wild Dog had an idea and said loudly, "But you have the strength to deal with Hao Tianwang." These words quickly ignited everyone's hope. Everyone looked eagerly at Tang Jing. Wild Dog continued, "You exposed the true faces of Bai Mei Daoist and his son, and cleaned up the sect for the righteous path. In the future, with you leading the righteous path, won't we be able to fight against Hao Tianwang?" Wild Dog was a smart person. He had long known that Tang Jing wanted to control the righteous path, but had not cut in. Now, wasn't this the perfect opportunity to cut in? In the righteous path, only Wild Dog had the deepest relationship with Tang Jing. This naturally needed him to bring it up. Otherwise, if he let Tang Jing bring it up himself, wouldn't that be too degrading? Wild Dog was able to survive in the cracks because he had his own set of survival rules. If he could not understand these rules, then he would not have been able to survive until now. Tang Jing gave Wild Dog a deep look, and there was a look of approval in the depths of his eyes. He had not misjudged Wild Dog. Wild Dog had helped him a lot. The righteous path had long been tempered over the years. They understood that in these troubled times, they needed to find a backer, only then could they survive. What kind of people were Hao Tianwang and King Wuling, and how powerful they were, they had long experienced. Therefore they needed someone to stand in front of them, only then could they survive. That makes sense. Tang Jing has cleaned up the sect for the righteous path, and his cultivation is extremely high. No one can compare to him. It is natural for him to be the leader of the righteous path. Someone agreed, and the voices of agreement grew louder and louder. Tang Jing is the popular choice. We are sincerely convinced. Bai Mei Daoists' cronies were originally fence-sitters. Their boss was dead, how could they dare to be noisy? They were deeply afraid that Tang Jing would pursue them. Instead, they were the ones who shouted the loudest. Of course, there was no lack of independent thinkers in the righteous path. They questioned, Tang Jing is not a member of the righteous path. Can he be the leader of the righteous path just because he is strong? If that's the case, doesn't that mean Hao Tianwang is more qualified to be the leader? As soon as these words came out, everyone fell silent. It was as if everyone was frightened by these words. Everyone looked at the person who spoke. It was actually the leader of Kingsaman, Taixuzi. Taixuzi seemed to have thrown caution to the wind. He said righteously, moreover, he is with the traitor of our sect. That makes him even more qualified to be the leader of the righteous path. Taixuzi had wanted to rely on Tang Jing in the past. Moreover, Tang Jing had saved everyone in Kingsaman. However, Tang Jing was with Tian Chanzi, and Tian Chanzi was a traitor of Kingsaman. Taixuzi was an upright person. He could not get over the hurdle in his heart. Although everyone else agreed that Tang Jing should be the leader, he could not sit by and do nothing. He boldly raised an objection. Taixuzi, what nonsense are you talking about? The others were afraid that Tang Jing would be angry, so they all reprimanded him. Tang Jing looked at Taixuzi deeply. He did not pay much attention to him in the past. He did not expect him to be so bold. He was not angry. Instead, he was happy. At least it proved that Taixuzi was an upright person. Taixuzi's expression changed when he was criticized by everyone. He was under great pressure, but he still insisted, I'm telling the truth. It's just that you don't dare to say it. Moreover, this concerns Kingsaman's reputation. I have to say it. Looking at this scene, Heaven Monk's thoughts were extremely complicated. He had never thought of this scene before, and never thought that he would ruin Tang Jing's plan. He knew that Tang Jing needed the strength of the righteous faction. This was the most important factor in helping Xiao Bai reclaim the Outland. Moreover, the righteous faction also needed Tang Jing. Without a strong leader like Tang Jing, the righteous faction would be in a state of disunity. Their days in the Outland would be even more difficult, and they might even face a disaster. Even his master, Kingsaman, was no exception. Everyone looked at Tang Jing. They did not know how he would respond. Tang Jing knew that this was a tricky situation. He had to protect Tian Chanzi, which meant that he was standing against Kingsaman. This was an unsolvable problem. The only person who could solve this problem was Tian Chanzi. However, Tian Chanzi would rather die than talk about what happened in the past. Tian Chanzi knew that this was all on him. He was struggling in his heart. Taixuzi said, if there's nothing to say, then the matter of the righteous faction's leader will have to be discussed later. Xiao Bai looked at Tang Jing worriedly. He asked in a low voice, Master, what should we do? Do you need me to shut Taixuzi up? Tang Jing shook his head. If he really did that, he would be no different from Bai Mei Daoist. In an instant, the originally favorable situation was ruined. Everyone felt as if 1,000 pounds of weight had been placed on their hearts. Many of the righteous path stared at Taixuzi indignantly, wishing that they could beat him up and shut him up. In such a dangerous environment like the sky beyond heaven, if the Heaven Monk did not stand up for them, how would they live their lives? Thump. Suddenly there was the sound of footsteps. Tian Chanzi walked forward and stood in front of Taixuzi. He said in a low voice, Kingsaman said that I am a traitor. Because of what happened in the past, I do not want to ruin Kingsaman's reputation. Therefore, I am willing to bear this infamy. However, if I don't tell the truth now, not only will I bear the infamy, but I will also implicate Tang Jing, who has always cared for me. Today I will let you know who the real traitor of Kingsaman is. Please visit this website to read the latest novel. Chapter 1686. Tian Chanzi's words were powerful and resonating. Everyone's spirit was shaken as they pricked up their ears and stared at him with burning eyes. Tang Jing's eyes lit up as the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. He had always believed that Tian Chanzi was innocent and that there was definitely some inside story. It was just that Tian Chanzi was unwilling to mention it. Now it seemed that his eyes were right. There really was some inside story. Tian Chanzi was unwilling to mention it because he was worried about Kingsaman's reputation. From this, it could be seen that he was fiercely protective of his sect. How could someone who was so protective of his sect be a traitor? Most of the people were in a gossipy mood and couldn't wait to hear what Tian Chanzi had to say. Taixuzi's heartstrings trembled as his expression changed slightly. What do you mean by this? Don't you hate traitors so much? I'll let you know who the real traitor is. Tian Chanzi calmly said. Taixuzi seemed to have a bad premonition as he braced himself and said, I'd like to hear what you have to say. He firmly believed in the things passed down by his sect. Since generation after generation used Tian Chanzi as a negative example, then he must be extremely bad. He must be someone that Kingsaman deeply hated. Tian Chanzi took a deep breath and closed his eyes slightly as if he was immersed in deep memories. His face revealed a complex expression. Sweetness, pain, happiness. All kinds of complex expressions interweaved on his face, as if he was drawing all kinds of gorgeous colors on a drawing board. Tian Chanzi opened his mouth and slowly spoke. Vivid scenes were displayed in front of everyone's eyes like a scroll painting. 1,000 years ago, Kingsaman was still a famous sect. 3 youths, 1 male and 2 females, entered Kingsaman's sect and became martial brothers and sisters. The oldest of them was given the name Tian Chanzi by the sect and was the senior brother. The fairy-like girl was given the name Miao Yin. The other youth was given the name Tian Kanzi. The 3 martial brothers and sisters cultivated together and comprehended together as if they were one person. The stars changed and the 3 grew up. Their cultivation levels were gradually separated. Tian Chanzi's cultivation level was the highest, followed by Miao Yin, and Tian Kanzi's cultivation level was slightly lower and ranked 3rd. The 3 of them were the top figures of Kingsaman's younger generation. Even in the entire cultivation world, they weren't inferior. In these 10 years, Tian Chanzi and Miao Yin fell in love with each other and secretly developed feelings for each other. However, Tian Kanzi also fell in love with Miao Yin. Tian Chanzi didn't reveal his relationship with Miao Yin out of consideration for his junior brother's feelings. Although it was widely rumored in Kingsaman that Tian Chanzi was the next sect master, the sect master of Kingsaman didn't make a decision arbitrarily. In order to test who was the most suitable candidate, he sent the 3 of them down the mountain to gain experience. Tian Chanzi didn't know this was a test for the sect master selection. However, Tian Kanzi eavesdropped on the conversation between the sect master and the elders and knew the significance of this experience. He knew that if he won this experience he might become the next sect master. If he became the sect master he would have a chance to be with Miao Yin. Therefore, during the experience Tian Kanzi did his best to perform well. He destroyed the devil's nest and became famous. However, compared to him, Tian Chanzi's performance was more dazzling and his reputation was more prominent. Tian Kanzi sadly found that no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't compete with Tian Chanzi. Jealousy and hatred grew in his heart. In order to achieve his goal, he began to use underhanded means. He even deliberately leaked information to the Devil's Army and attracted the Devil's Army to hunt him down. This experience didn't only involve the 3 of them. There were other outstanding young people in Kingsaman who were led by Tian Chanzi. These people were surrounded by the Devil's Army and suffered heavy casualties. In the end, except for the 3 of them, the rest were all killed in battle and fled back to Kingsaman. The sect leader flew into a rage and investigated the responsibility of the Heaven Monk, believing that he had undeniable responsibility for all of this. Tian Chanzi was punished by the sect master to reflect on his mistakes for 3 years. 3 years later, when he returned to the public, everything had changed. Tian Kanzi suddenly became an influential figure in Kingsaman. Tian Chanzi didn't care. He didn't like to fight for power. Because he felt guilty about the death of his fellow sect members, he didn't care about the affairs of the sect. The only obsession in his heart was his junior sister, Miao Yin. The sect master of Kingsaman passed away and passed the position to Tian Kanzi. He even betrothed Miao Yin to Tian Kanzi. Tian Kanzi was shocked and desperate. He had once expressed his love for Miao Yin to the sect master and hoped that the sect master would let them be together. The sect master had already agreed. Tian Kanzi was deeply hurt when the sect master went back on his words. Seeing that Tian Kanzi and Miao Yin's wedding date was approaching, Tian Kanzi didn't want to see it happen. He left Kingsaman without hesitation. While traveling outside, he had unintentionally caught a demon clan, and the demon clan had unintentionally revealed the matter of him cooperating with Tian Kanzi. Only then did Heaven Monk understand that the reason for his crushing defeat back then was because Tian Kanzi had leaked the news. Tian Kanzi, who had lost all hope, was reignited with fighting spirit and anger. He went back on his words in Kingsaman and went to reason with Tian Kanzi. Tian Kanzi was already the sect master and had already married Miao Yin. Tian Kanzi naturally returned without success. Tian Kanzi didn't admit it at all. Instead, he slandered Tian Kanzi for colluding with the devil race. In addition, the elders in Kingsaman found the death of the former sect master strange. They suspected that someone killed him and it was someone very close to him. Tian Kanzi took the opportunity to pin the crime on Tian Kanzi. He said that Tian Kanzi killed the sect master because he saw that the position of sect master was hopeless. Tian Kanzi's methods were impressive. Although he hadn't been the sect master for long, he had already secretly controlled most of the people in Kingsaman. When he gave an order, most of the people naturally denounced Tian Kanzi and wanted to capture him to avenge the former sect master. After a fierce battle, Tian Kanzi escaped with wounds all over his body. However, he didn't run away. Instead, he found his junior martial sister Miao Yin. After Miao Yin married Tian Kanzi, she gradually discovered his true colors. Naturally, she eloped with Tian Kanzi and left Kingsaman. Tian Kanzi was furious. He sent out countless people to kill the two of them. He also announced Tian Kanzi's numerous crimes, and nailed him on the pillar of shame as a traitor. Tian Kanzi and Miao Yin hid from place to place. In the end, Miao Yin died in the hands of the enemy. Before she died, she left a last wish for Tian Kanzi to find a way to return to Kingsaman and wash away the shame on him. Tian Kanzi was heartbroken when his beloved died. If it weren't for Miao Yin's last wish, he would have followed in her footsteps. Tian Kanzi already knew that the culprit was Tian Kanzi. The murder of the sect master and the so-called marriage arranged by the sect master were also orchestrated by Tian Kanzi. Therefore, Tian Kanzi had to collect detailed evidence in order to overthrow Tian Kanzi. Although Tian Kanzi inherited the position of sect master, the elders in Kingsaman still had the power to impeach the sect master. However, if he wanted the elders to listen to his grievances and evidence, there must be conditions. There was no chance for him to speak in front of them. The only condition was that he had to make a great contribution to Kingsaman. Unparalleled martial arts was one of the conditions. As long as Tian Kanzi found a set of unparalleled martial arts and offered it to Kingsaman, the elders would listen to his grievances. Unfortunately, in order to obtain the legendary ancient Tongtian scroll, his soul was unfortunately sucked into the scroll along with the Yin demon. To read the latest novel, please visit Chapter 1687. The Heaven Monk spoke tirelessly. The events of the past were full of twists and turns, causing people to be intoxicated by it, their hearts rising and falling. Many people were deeply attracted by the fate of the Heaven Monk. They suddenly realized so this was the inside story of the past. Many people felt that it was unfair for him. Generations after generations of Kingsaman had labeled Tian Kanzi as a traitor. This was a great shame. It must have been Tian Kanzi's doing. Everyone gnashed their teeth at Tian Kanzi. How could there be such a despicable person in the world? Tang Zheng, Xiaobai, and the others were the most familiar with Tian Kanzi. It was hard to imagine that Tian Kanzi, who was usually optimistic and cheerful, had such a complicated past. The pain he had suffered was moving, and under his usual calm or happy appearance hid a pain that ordinary people could not bear. Everyone was in awe of him. Tang Zheng looked at Tian Kanzi seriously. There were so many things he wanted to say but he couldn't say them. Tian Kanzi couldn't hide the pain on his face. Recalling the past was tantamount to tearing open a scar that had been covered in dust for a long time. Taixuzi and the people of Kingsaman were stunned. This was completely different from what they had heard since they were young. Was there really so much inside story? Many people were skeptical. After all, they weren't like the others. They had deep feelings and respect for Kingsaman. It was hard for them to accept such subversive information. Taixuzi was shaken. His face turned pale and his lips trembled. After a long time he said, Tian Chanzi, since you have suffered so much, why didn't you say it earlier? Why did you only announce it now? Did you make it up on purpose? Tian Chanzi's mouth twitched. This is Kingsiman's scandal. Once exposed, Kingsiman's reputation will be ruined. As a person of Kingsiman, how can I sacrifice Kingsiman's reputation for myself? If this matter didn't affect Tang Zheng, I wouldn't let these dusty pasts see the light of day. I see. Everyone had an expression of sudden realization. They were filled with admiration, moved by Tian Chanzi's spirit of self-sacrifice, as well as his deep feelings for the Clear Void sect. Taixuzi's eyes kept changing. He couldn't tell whether Tian Chanzi was telling the truth or not. As the leader of Kingsiman, he didn't know what to do. Everyone looked at each other. They didn't know how to deal with this matter. Tang Zheng was moved. He understood that Tian Chanzi did all this for him. Since this was the case, he had the responsibility to wash away the shame on Tian Chanzi. Tang Zheng was moved. His expression was stern. He asked, Tian Chanzi, you collected evidence of Tian Sangzi's crimes. Now you can announce it to everyone and prove your innocence. The others immediately grasped this key point. They looked at Tian Chanzi with anticipation and urged, yes, hurry up and announce the evidence of Tian Sangzi's crimes. Then the truth will come to light. No one will suspect you anymore. Tian Chanzi looked at Tang Zheng with gratitude. He couldn't lose the evidence of Tian Sangzi's crimes. After all, he had spent a lot of effort to obtain it. It was also the evidence to prove his innocence. Tian Chanzi hesitated for a moment. Under the encouraging and expectant gazes of Tang Zheng and the others, Tian Chanzi waved his hand in the air and a light screen appeared. This light screen was very magical. It was like a movie being projected in the air. It was very clear and the people on the screen were very lifelike, as if they were about to come out. There were two different groups of people on the screen. One group had one person while the other had more than 10 people. Everyone's pupils shrank. They immediately recognized that it was Tian Sangzi because there was a jade pendant on his waist with the words, Tian Sangzi carved on it. This is the demon race's illusion art. Those who knew their stuff immediately recognized this light screen. It was a technique of the demon race, but it didn't have any offensive power. It was a technique used to record images. This must have been recorded by the demon race when Tian Sangzi was plotting with them. Tian Sangzi didn't know about it. The demon race is really cunning. They actually used the illusion art. The devil clan's actions have a deep meaning. Once Tian Chanzi controls the distinct void sect, his status will be high and his identity will be illustrious. Then, the devil clan will be able to use the phantom technique to record everything and use it to threaten Tian Chanzi. They will make the distinct void sect their puppet and help them do things. I remember now. I once heard the seniors in the sect mention this. Back then, the righteous faction had tried to encircle and annihilate the devil race several times, but all of them returned in failure. Even the originally well-planned encirclement and annihilation that was sure to be a sure win came to nothing. It was as if someone had leaked information. However, there was no evidence and this matter was left unsettled. Could it be that someone really leaked the information to the demon race and this person was Tian Sangzi? Someone had an idea and questioned. I think it's very possible. He was already the sect master of Kingsiman at that time. His status and position were very high. Naturally, no one would suspect him and no one would dare to investigate him. This matter will naturally be left unsettled and there will be no conclusion. Everyone's analysis was clear and logical. The truth was slowly coming to light. Taixuzi stared at the screen in a daze. He obviously knew that the illusion art could not be faked. This meant that Tian Sangzi was indeed in cahoots with the demon race. As for whether that person was Tian Sangzi or not, Taixuzi was 100% sure. Because Kingsiman had clear portraits of the previous sect masters. Taixuzi had seen them countless times. How could he forget or be mistaken? The screen disappeared. Everyone was filled with righteous indignation. They were all members of the Orthodox faction and couldn't help but feel humiliated. After Tian Chanzi finished speaking, he actually let out a sigh of relief. It was as if he had completed a part of Miao Yin's last wish. He felt a bit more at ease. Tang Zheng stared at Taixuzi with a burning gaze and asked, "You still don't believe me?" Tian Sangzi frowned and had nothing to say. Tang Zheng looked around and stared at all the Orthodox faction members. His voice was like a bell as he said, "Now, everyone knows who the real traitor is?" Tian Sangzi. Tian Sangzi. Roars of anger could topple mountains and overturn seas. Many people were filled with righteousness. How could they tolerate this kind of injustice? They all shouted with hatred for a common enemy. Tang Zheng calmly nodded and said, "Yes, the real traitor is Tian Songzi. And Tian Chanzi is the most innocent. He has endured thousands of years of infamy. From today onwards, this infamy will end here. No one can think of splashing dirty water on Tian Chanzi. I also won't allow anyone to splash dirty water on Tian Chanzi." This declaration was simple and crude, but it was filled with sincerity. No one dared to question it. Taixuzi lowered his head. He could not say a single word of rebuttal. The other members of Kingsaman felt even more humiliated. Not only did they sympathize with Tian Chanzi's situation, but they were also bitterly disappointed and distressed for their sect to have such a scandal. Chapter 1688. The time had come. Wild Dog and the others shouted, "Tian Chanzi was slandered. He is not a traitor. Tian Songzi is the traitor. Yes, Tian Chanzi is the true righteous one. He is our comrade." The voices rose and fell, and no one doubted the Heaven Monk anymore. The people from the Clear Void sect looked at the Heaven Monk with eyes full of sympathy and shame, ashamed of the wrong views that they had always insisted on. However, the Kingsaman people did not dare to express their opinions directly. They looked at Taixuzi, the sect master. He was the one who had to make the decision. Taixuzi's expression kept changing. It was as if a mountain was on his shoulders. He was in a dilemma. If he cleared Tian Chanzi's name, he would have to convict Tian Songzi, the sect master from 1,000 years ago. As a junior, it was disgraceful. However, if he did not do so, Kingsaman's reputation would be ruined in front of everyone. He would not be able to establish himself in the righteous world. Kingsaman would be isolated. In the end, it was not hard to imagine what would happen to Kingsaman. Kingsaman was destroyed by him. He would have to bear the blame. Yes. Taixuzi took a deep breath. His eyes gradually became firm. He had made up his mind. He walked towards Heaven Monk step by step. Everyone held their breaths, knowing that this matter was about to be settled. Among them, the most nervous person was Tian Chanzi. This was related to his long-cherished wish and Sweet Sound's last wish. He could not predict the outcome. His breathing quickened. Taixuzi stood in front of Tian Chanzi. He looked serious and said firmly, "Taixuzi of Kingsaman greets Senior Tian Chanzi." Taixuzi got down on one knee and prostrated himself in front of Tian Chanzi. Everyone was silent, but everyone understood what this meant. Taixuzi admitted that Tian Chanzi was wrongly accused and nailed Tian Chanzi onto the pillar of shame. It was his decision as the sect master, as well as the decision of all the people in Kingsaman. Tian Chanzi's expression became extremely emotional. His whole body trembled and tears glistened in his eyes. After knowing Heaven Monk for so long, Tang Zheng had never seen him like this before. His heart was filled with sorrow and his heart was also moved. Taixuzi stood up and said respectfully, "Kingsaman welcomes Tian Chanzi back to Kingsaman." When the other members of the Clear Void sect heard this, they all knelt down on one knee and kowtowed. In unison they said respectfully, "We respectfully invite Senior Heaven Monk to return to the Clear Void sect." Their voices were loud and resonated above everyone's heads. It shook their hearts. Tears flowed out of his eyes, and 2 lines of tears hung on Heaven Monk's cheeks. This was the goal that he had always dreamed of, and now it had finally been realized. His lips trembled and he said intermittently, "Miaoyin, did you hear that? I finally returned to my sect." Everyone was moved by his emotions. Tian Chanzi started sobbing softly and squatted on the ground. He did not have any image at all, but his image in everyone's hearts was extremely high, even higher than a mountain. Taixuzi said again, "The position of the sect master of Kingsaman should have belonged to Senior Tian Chanzi. From today onwards, you are the sect master of Kingsaman." What? Taixuzi's words shocked everyone again. They looked at Taixuzi in disbelief. He was willing to hand over the position of the sect master to someone else. Few people could compare to him. Tian Chanzi looked up and shook his head. He ignored the tears on his face and said, "No. How can this be? The position of the sect master belongs to you. How can I be the sect master?" Taixuzi's tone was firm as he said sincerely, "Back then, Senior should have inherited the position of sect master, but it was snatched away by Tian Chanzi's scheming, causing the distinct Void sect's reputation to be tarnished. Now that you have taken over the position of the sect master, Kingsaman is finally back on the right path. Please don't refuse." Tian Chanzi was speechless. He did not know how to refute. His biggest wish was to return to Kingsaman. He did not covet the position of the sect master. To him, power was nothing more than a passing cloud. Taikusuzi did not give him a chance to refuse. He knelt down again and said, "Taikusuzi of Kingsuman greets the sect master." "Greetings, sect master." The other Kingsuman people also knelt down again. Tianchanzi looked at the group of disciples who knelt down. He was filled with emotions and did not know what to do. The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth revealed a gratified smile and advised, "Heaven monk, this is what everyone wants. Besides, as Taikusuzi said, you are the sect master to put an end to Kingsuman's past and create a future for Kingsuman. Please don't refuse." Tianchanzi looked at Tang Zheng in a daze. Did he really have the right to be the sect master? After all, he had been away from Kingsuman for so long. However, Tang Zheng's encouraging look gave him great courage and motivation. Phew. He heavily exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and recovered his solemn expression. Looking at everyone in the distinct void sect, he said in a deep voice, "Many thanks for everyone's love. I will definitely not disappoint everyone's kind intentions. From now on, our distinct void sect will be united as one, and we will once again regain our former glory and glory." The clear void sect all raised their heads, their eyes filled with fervor. The heaven monk had said what they had always wished for. Kingsuman used to be one of the most prestigious sects in Kingsuman. However, it had fallen so far. Everyone in Kingsuman was disappointed and did not want to return to the glory of the past. However, their talents had withered. Even Taikusuzi, the sect master, was not as good as the other sections. How could they rise among the orthodox sects? However, things were different now. With Tianchanzi, Kingsuman would truly rise. Besides, Tianchanzi and Tang Zheng were very close. Kingsuman had all the advantages. How could they not rise? Kingsuman people stood up. They straightened their backs and stuck out their chests. Their spirits seemed to have changed. The others were filled with emotions. Wild Dog looked from Tianchanzi to Tang Zheng. He said loudly, "The truth is out. Tianchanzi is not a traitor. Therefore Tang Zheng is the rightful sect master. Does anyone have any objections?" No one in Kingsuman has any objections. We support the new alliance master. Taikusuzi was the first to express his stance. The other Kingsuman people followed suit. The distinct void sect's rise was imminent, and all of this was thanks to Tang Zheng. Even though the distinct void sect's reputation had been affected to a certain extent, but in the future when they rise, this little bit of influence would not be worth mentioning. If Tianchanzi did not return, Taikusuzi could not guarantee how long Kingsuman would last. Perhaps they would disappear from the world in the near future. Comparing the two, the current situation was the best outcome. The others did not have any objections. They all expressed their agreement. Tianchanzi returned the favor. He stepped forward and bowed to Tang Zheng respectfully. He shouted loudly, "Greetings, Alliance Master. Greetings, Alliance Master." The others were either convinced from the bottom of their hearts or forced by the situation. All of them bowed down to Tang Zheng and shouted loudly, their voices toppling the mountains and overturning the seas, shaking everyone's hearts. For the latest novel to read, please visit Chapter 1689. All of the righteous faction members kowtowed to Tang Zheng. Not only that, Xiao Bai also kowtowed. His kowtow naturally led the elder ancestor and the others to kowtow as well. Yi Dingdang giggled and also kowtowed mischievously. When the others saw this, how could they not kowtow? Thus, in this huge space in the boorish desolation, other than Tang Zheng who was standing alone, everyone else kowtowed to Tang Zheng. Their movements were neat and uniform and their momentum was like a rainbow. Tang Zheng was not an indecisive person. He needed the strength of the righteous faction. Since the righteous faction had pledged their allegiance, whether it was out of sincerity or because of the situation, he did not care. Naturally, there was no reason for him to refuse. He swept his gaze around in a dignified manner and said lightly, "It would be impolite to refuse. Then I will take up the position of alliance leader." Everyone rise. Their goal was achieved. Everyone stood up and looked at Tang Zheng with complicated gazes. There was no lack of excitement and suspicion. Tang Zheng did not mind. He was confident that in time he could make these people pledge their allegiance to him wholeheartedly. Double happiness came at once. Tianchanzi took over as sect leader and Tang Zheng became alliance leader. The righteous faction seemed to have gained a backbone. The boorish desolation underground was a scene of joy and harmony. There was no sign of the hostility and danger from before. A new broom sweeps clean. Everyone was paying attention to Tang Zheng, waiting for him to come up with a new countermeasure to resist Hao Tianwang's attack. Tang Jing had already thought of a countermeasure. He was confident and threw out the heavenly chess. Most people did not understand the power of the heavenly chess. They could not help but be puzzled. They did not know what was so special about the heavenly chess that Tang Jing would give it so much hope. Tang Jing was not in a hurry to explain. There was no proof for this kind of thing. Only when everyone witnessed it with their own eyes would they be able to understand its profoundness and essence. No one disobeyed Tang Jing's orders. They all followed his instructions and arranged the heavenly chess. Tang Jing knew the heavenly chess like the back of his hand. He was not inferior to the creator of the heavenly chess, Ji Wuxiang. Furthermore, Tang Jing's knowledge far surpassed Ji Wuxiang's. Therefore, Tang Jing was the only one who knew that the new heavenly chess was slightly different from the original heavenly chess. The celestial chess covered a huge area. The celestial chess was set up in the wildlands and the surrounding areas. Tang Jing knew this area like the back of his hand even without the need for soldiers to investigate. Nothing could escape his notice. After all, the wildlands was a wasteland where not even a blade of grass grew. It was not a good idea for them to hide here for too long. The celestial chess could protect the boorish land and prevent them from being completely annihilated. However, they still had to think of other ways to find a breakthrough. Everyone knew that taking back Sky Beyond Sky was going to be a long battle, so they had to be prepared for a long battle. Before the army moved, the provisions would move first. This was a well-known fact. Although a cultivator's dependence on food had decreased a lot, a cultivator still needed to eat in the end. It was just a matter of time. Therefore, the food problem needed to be solved urgently. Many of the righteous faction's treasures had been destroyed by Tang Jing. Moreover, the entire righteous faction's treasures were very outdated. Not to mention holy artifacts, there were not even many heaven-grade treasures. Therefore, collecting materials and refining treasures was the most important thing. However, the 9 revolving pill furnace was still in the hands of the King of Medicine. They could only collect materials for the time being. As a native of Sky Beyond Sky, the elder ancestor understood Sky Beyond Sky the most. He was also not unfamiliar with the wildlands. After hearing Tang Jing's words, he could not help but fall into deep thought. The others began to discuss and brainstorm. They all wanted to contribute a little bit of their strength. Collecting these things in the wildlands is like trying to get fish from a tree. It's impossible. The elder ancestor said decisively. This was like a bucket of cold water being poured over their heads. Everyone quivered and looked at the elder ancestor, their eyes asking why. The wildlands is a wasteland. How can there be food and raw materials for refining treasures? The elder ancestor explained. Tang Jing thought, if a wasteland can be turned into an oasis like a desert, then wouldn't the wildlands be turned into fertile land? However, this would require the Tree of Life. When he thought of the Tree of Life, Tang Jing thought of the fire qilin. This was a divine beast. If he could tame the fire qilin, it would be a great help. As long as he could find the Tree of Life, it would not be difficult to find the fire qilin. Sky Beyond Sky was a large world. Naturally, there would be a Tree of Life. Tang Jing could not hold back his curiosity and hurriedly asked, "Where is the Tree of Life in Sky Beyond Sky?" The Tree of Life was very important. If the Tree of Life could be moved to the wildlands, then wouldn't the wildlands be turned into an oasis? The problem of ingredients would be easily solved. Everyone looked at the elder ancestor, hoping to hear the whereabouts of the Tree of Life from him. Unexpectedly, the elder ancestor's eyes were tightly knit together. He said with a frown, "What is the Tree of Life? I've never seen it before. Naturally, I don't know where it is." Tang Jing stared at the elder ancestor with a burning gaze. Seeing that he was not joking, he could not help but be stunned for a moment. He said nervously, "The Tree of Life is the foundation of the great wide world. The Tree of Life can change the weather and spiritual qi, turning a desert into an oasis. You've lived in Sky Beyond Sky for so many years. How could you have never heard of the Tree of Life?" The elder ancestor nodded with certainty. "I've indeed never heard of it." The others can testify that no one in Sky Beyond Sky has ever heard of the Tree of Life. Tang Jing turned to stare at Xiaobai and asked, "Xiaobai, do you not have the Tree of Life in your memories of Sky Beyond Sky?" Xiaobai was not in a hurry to answer. Instead, he closed his eyes and searched for the information passed down by the imperial family. There was too much information and too mixed. He did not have time to completely sort it out. Therefore, he was not sure if there was any information about the Tree of Life in these memories. He could only sharpen his knife and search on the spot. Tang Jing knew a little about it, so he did not disturb him and waited quietly for him. After a long time, Xiao Bai suddenly opened his eyes. The look in his eyes was very strange. There was a mixture of joy and doubt. "How is it?" Tang Jing hurriedly asked. The others also looked at Xiao Bai curiously. Xiao Bai said in a deep voice, "I'm afraid that you won't believe me even if I tell you, but there's indeed no tree of life in sky beyond sky." "What?" Tang Jing's expression changed and he exclaimed, "The tree of life is the foundation of the great wide world. How can sky beyond sky not have it?" The others also nodded. Clearly they could not understand this question. Xiao Bai's mouth curled into an unfathomable smile. "The great wide world doesn't have to have a tree of life. The tree of life is only unique to some great wide worlds. The tree of life is just a representation, and it will have different representations in different worlds." Tang Jing had an idea and asked, "Are you saying that the foundation of sky beyond sky is something else, which is equivalent to the tree of life in the human world?" Xiao Bai nodded. Tang Jing opened his mouth in shock. The others were also dumbfounded. They did not expect this truth. Tang Jing recovered from his shock. He collected his thoughts and asked curiously, "What's the foundation of sky beyond sky?" Xiao Bai opened his mouth and softly spat out two words. When everyone heard this, their expressions changed greatly. Their expressions were very interesting. They never dreamed that the foundation of sky beyond sky was this. The great wide world was really full of strange things. For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 1690. Kunpeng. Those were the two words that Xiao Bai said. Although his voice was not loud, it was so loud that everyone was stunned. Not only Tang Jing and the rest but most of the people from the righteous path had seen the Kunpeng before. They were shocked when they heard that the Kunpeng was the foundation of the Outland, which was equivalent to the Tree of Life. Tang Jing did not expect the Kunpeng to have such an identity. After a while, he regained his senses and asked, "Why is the Kunpeng the foundation of the Outland?" Xiao Bai shrugged and said, "This is what the imperial family's memory told me. I don't know the reason." Tang Jing revealed a look of disappointment. The old ancestor came back to his senses and said thoughtfully, "Back then the late emperor and empress favored the Kunpeng a lot. Although the Kunpeng didn't take any position, its status was extraordinary. Many people didn't understand the reason. Now, it seems that the late emperor knew that the Kunpeng was the foundation of the Outland, so he could not be neglected." Red Moon was enlightened and said, "I was still angry that the Kunpeng betrayed the late emperor and followed Hao Tianwang. Now it seems that the Kunpeng did not take a stand." The elder ancestor nodded in agreement. "That makes sense." Tang Jing remembered the reason why the Outland invaded the human world. They moved the cultivators to the Outland to repair the foundation of the Outland. In order to seize the Outland, Hao Tianwang damaged the foundation of the Outland during the war with the imperial family. The Outland was in danger and was downgraded from a macroscopic world to a microcosm. Perhaps the Kunpeng was injured during the war, so the foundation of the Outland was damaged. Hao Tianwang had no choice but to repair it. In other words, Hao Tianwang did not know that the Kunpeng was the foundation of the Outland, but he must have found out later. But after careful consideration of this matter, he couldn't help but be shocked. The Kunpeng had the divine power of giving someone a taste of their own medicine, but it was injured during the war. It showed how tragic and earth-shattering the war was. This also meant that the Kunpeng's divine ability was not omnipotent. As long as one's strength reached a certain level, one could also break this divine ability. Since Kunpeng is the foundation of sky beyond sky, then naturally it can't always fall into the hands of Hao Tianwang. We must find a way to take it back. Tang Jing said firmly. The others nodded as well. In the past, they did not know the importance of the Kunpeng, so they did not pay attention to it. But things were different now. Not to mention whether or not the Kunpeng could turn the wasteland into an oasis, just the fact that it was the foundation of the Outland meant that it had to be in his hands. Xiao Bai said worriedly, "The Kunpeng doesn't listen to our orders. How can we take it back?" Tang Jing said with a smile, "Kunpeng doesn't listen to our orders, but it doesn't necessarily listen to Hao Tianwang's orders." "What do you mean? Didn't the Kunpeng carry Hao Tianwang's army to attack the Suicide Valley? If the Kunpeng really listened to Hao Tianwang's orders, then Hao Tianwang wouldn't have escaped with his tail between his legs. Because if the Kunpeng could reflect attacks, then Hao Tianwang would be in an invincible position. Why would he need to be afraid of our counterattack?" In the past, Tang Jing would not have thought of this, but ever since he knew the true identity of the Kunpeng, this point had suddenly become clear. When the others heard this, their eyes lit up as if they had never thought of this before. If not for Tang Jing's reminder, they probably would not have thought of it so quickly. Xiao Bai's eyes lit up and he clicked his tongue in wonder. That makes sense. I'm afraid that Hao Tianwang cannot completely control the Kunpeng, which gives us an opportunity to take advantage of it. Tang Jing nodded his head in relief. The others also revealed looks of joy, eager to give it a try, and said, "Then what are we waiting for? Right, let's hurry up and snatch the Kunpeng back. I have a feeling that once we snatch the Kunpeng back, our chances of victory will be much higher." Everyone's gazes landed on Tang Jing, waiting for his decision. Tang Jing muttered to himself, "Indeed, so we have to make a trip to the Imperial City." The Kunpeng was in the Imperial City, which was Hao Tianwang's base camp. It was like going deep into the tiger's den. Everyone's expressions also became serious. This was an extremely dangerous mission. If they were not careful, they could lose their lives. Everyone realized this, but no one retreated. Instead, they fought to be the first to do so. Yi Dingdang anxiously declared, "I'm going to the Imperial City. I've never been to the Imperial City before. Only by going once will this trip not be in vain." Her tone was relaxed, as if she did not care about the danger at all. Wu and Lu Qingmei were not willing to fall behind and rushed to say, "I'll go too." Other than a few people from the righteous faction, the others quickly followed suit, unwilling to fall behind. Among the righteous faction's people, there were many sect leaders from the great sects. They were not familiar with Tang Jing and the others, but when they saw how fearless they were, they could not help but turn pale. The Imperial City and Hao Tianwang are so terrifying, but this group of people are not afraid at all. They could not understand this kind of boldness and courage. These past few years they had been hiding and keeping a respectful distance, afraid that Hao Tianwang would attack them. This group of people actually took the initiative to deliver themselves to them. Tang Jing indifferently looked at the righteous faction, seeing through their thoughts, but he did not care and said, "If so many people go, wouldn't that be too eye-catching? We cannot avoid a big battle this time. We are not going to go sightseeing." Pausing for a moment, his gaze fell on Yi Dingdang as he solemnly said, "Wasn't the place we transmigrated to above the Imperial City? You've already seen the Imperial City, why do you need to make another trip?" Yi Dingdang was not convinced, "But that was just a glance from afar. We did not go in. How could we appreciate its elegance? The Imperial City is not elegant." Tang Jing waved his hand, completely cutting off Yi Dingdang's thoughts, and said, "Tian Chanzi, you will stay in the Burish lands. Xiao Bai, the four symbols, Azura, and I will go to the Imperial City. The others will stay in the Burish lands. This is our base, this is our foundation, we cannot give it up." Tian Chanzi did not object. He had just returned to Kingsaman, and was also the new sect leader. He had to sort out the Kingsaman from top to bottom and formulate a plan for future development, so he could not leave. The elder ancestor, Chiyaya, and the witch tribe obviously did not want to stay in the Burish lands. They all wanted to charge and break through the enemy lines. If it was any other situation, Tang Jing naturally would not go against their wishes, but this time it was really too dangerous. He did not have the confidence. How could he bear to let his subordinates take the risk? Although some people were unwilling, they could not refute Tang Jing, and could only accept all the arrangements. When the news that they were going to enter the tiger's den spread, it caused quite a stir in the righteous faction. Everyone was worried, and a new problem arose spontaneously. Tang Jing was carefully preparing to go to the Imperial City, but Tian Chanzi and the other sect leaders came looking for him. Tang Jing looked at the group of sect leaders in astonishment. "Sect leaders, why are you looking for me?" At this juncture, this group of people definitely came together for an important matter, which made them very puzzled. What exactly was it that made them gather so many people? To read the latest novel, please visit Chapter 1691. The few sect leaders looked at each other in dismay, their faces filled with hesitation, as though they did not dare to say it directly. After a long while they recommended Heaven Monk and said, "Sect leader Heaven Monk, why don't you say it?" Tang Jing looked at Tian Chanzi curiously. Tian Chanzi rolled his eyes speechlessly and said bluntly, "Leaders, since you can freely travel between the human world and the heavens beyond, when can you return to the human world?" Tang Jing's heart trembled. He had actually overlooked such a crucial question. For the righteous path, they did not care about taking back the heavens beyond. Since there was hope of returning to the human world, they naturally cared more about this point. Pairs of burning eyes looked at Tang Jing, waiting for his answer. Tang Jing muttered, Leaders, although we came from the human world, if we want to return to the human world, it is not an easy task. What? The leaders' faces changed slightly and someone asked. Tang Jing already had a countermeasure and said, because there are too many people in the righteous path with my skills, there is no way to bring so many people back. Although the space of Sumer Heavens was huge, it was still another space. When passing through the space door, Sumer Heavens and the space door would have some kind of impact. This required Tang Jing to use his skills to resolve this impact. This was what Tang Jing learned the last time he passed through the space door. In the past, he thought that using Sumer Heavens to bring many people through the space door would be easy. But in the end he found that he was wrong. The more people there were in Sumer Heavens, the more difficult it would be for him to pass through the space door. There were so many people in the righteous path, how could he bring all of them back to the human world? If he brought them back in batches, it would cause unfairness and dissatisfaction, so he might as well let them all stay in the heavens beyond. The situation in the human world was already different from hundreds of years ago. This group of righteous path faced the problem of life and death in the heavens beyond. But if they returned to the human world, they would be absolute powerhouses. He could not imagine what kind of problems the human world would face at that time. The key point was that he did not have the energy to deal with this problem, so he could only delay it for now. In addition, if he wanted to take back the heavens beyond heaven, he would need the help of this group of righteous path. In this process he could clearly see who was truly trustworthy. Regardless of whether it was out of selfishness or righteousness, Tang Jing could not agree to the righteous path so quickly. He pondered for a while and said awkwardly, passing through the space gate is not an easy task. I don't have the ability to bring everyone back to the human world for the time being. As soon as he said that, the sect leaders' expressions changed. One of them said, the outer sky is so dangerous. How can we not leave as soon as possible? In the past they had no hope of leaving. Now that they had a glimmer of hope, how could they be willing to stay in heavens beyond? Tang Jing looked at everyone with a scorching gaze. I'm not afraid even if I stay in the realm beyond heaven with all of you, so what do you have to be afraid of? Moreover, there is a celestial chest set up in the wildlands. As long as you don't leave the wildlands, you will be safe. All the sect leaders cursed in their hearts. What's so great about heavenly chess? They couldn't tell at all. As for your strength, of course they weren't worried. We weren't as powerful as you. However, they could only swallow these words in their hearts. They didn't dare to say it out loud. They said resentfully, we've been away from the human world for too long. Everyone misses home too much. Tang Jing laughed coldly. This excuse was too old-fashioned. There was nothing new about it. It was just fooling a 3-year-old child. Tian Chanzi also understood the thoughts of these sect leaders. He was quite angry. They had just joined Tang Jing's side, and they were already making demands. Were they really that afraid of death? Tian Chanzi have died once. I'm not afraid of death. Tian Chanzi stepped forward bravely and said passionately, at least there is one righteous person who hasn't left heavens beyond heaven. Then I will not leave heavens beyond heaven for one day. Now all the sect leaders should be satisfied, right? All the sect leaders looked at Tian Chanzi in astonishment. They didn't expect him to stand up so boldly. These bold words made them flabbergasted. Tian Chanzi's eyes were firm. He didn't allow anyone to question him. You're exaggerating. Tian Chanzi is a noble sect leader. How can he be the last to leave heavens beyond heaven? Someone hurriedly tried to smooth things over. Tian Chanzi didn't appreciate it at all. He stubbornly said, I've already said my piece. Everyone just wait and see. Tang Jing looked at Tian Chanzi gratefully. This action resolved everything. Everyone knew that Tian Chanzi and Tang Jing had a close relationship. He was willing to be the last to leave heavens beyond heaven. How could the others be dissatisfied? Even if there were complaints, they were all blocked. All the sect leaders looked at each other and secretly shook their heads. They knew that there was no reason to continue speaking. They all said goodbye to Tang Jing and left resentfully. Tian Chanzi looked at their departing figures. His expression became complicated. He sighed and said, this group of short-sighted people. How can the righteous path become like this today? Tang Jing wasn't surprised. The special environment of heavens beyond heaven had caused all of this. They did everything for survival, so naturally they would become much more selfish. He said, don't worry. Their hopes are on me, so they have to listen to my orders. I'm worried that when they return to the human world in the future, your identity as the alliance leader may not be able to command them. At that time they will be in a state of disunity. It's hard to predict what will happen. Tian Chanzi shook his head and sighed. Tang Jing wasn't worried. He smiled faintly and said, when they return to the human world, the martial artists in Dianan will be strong enough. Moreover, I will set up as many heaven's chess pieces as possible. If they want to do anything wrong, they can only lift a stone and smash it on their own feet. Tian Chanzi nodded secretly and said, since you have a countermeasure, I won't say more. This episode didn't affect the established plan. The day of departure was coming. These few days, everyone was carefully preparing, conserving their energy and adjusting their condition to the best. Even if there was a fierce battle, they were not afraid at all. At the edge of the barbarian land, several leaders of the righteous path, Yi Dingdang, the three girls, the great ancestor, and the witch tribe stood in front of Tang Zheng and the others. They were reluctant to part and waved goodbye. The three girls kept reminding Tang Zheng to be careful and return safely. Tang Zheng felt their intentions and was full of pride. He patted his chest to reassure them. The great ancestor and the others looked at Xiaobai worriedly. Although Xiaobai's cultivation was already at the 8th grade of the Mahayana realm, which was the highest among everyone, the great ancestor couldn't help but worry. After all, the imperial city was a tiger's den. It was the enemy's base camp. It was hard to predict what kind of changes and dangers would happen. The red lunar beast also joined the great ancestor's team. They tried their best to persuade Xiaobai to change his mind and bring them along to take care of him. Xiaobai turned his head and glanced at Tang Zheng. He didn't change his mind at all. The great ancestor and the red lunar beast's last efforts were in vain. Alright then, let's go. Everyone, wait for our triumphant return with the Kuanping. Tang Zheng waved his hand and said proudly. Chapter 1692. In the sky above the imperial city, a white cloud floated over and blended in with the other clouds. The night was like water, and the somersault cloud's movements were inconspicuous. Tang Zheng and Xiaobai felt the biting cold night wind and looked into the distance, sizing up the imperial city. Under the curtain of night, the imperial city lit up with lights, like the stars in the sky. It was no longer as noisy as it was during the day. In an instant, it regained its peace as if someone had pressed the mute button. They deliberately waited until the night to act, because sneaking into the imperial city at night was the least likely way to be discovered. Master, where do you think Hao Tianwang hid the Kuanpeng's huge body? Xiaobai was puzzled and asked curiously. The last time they sneaked into the imperial city, they did not see the Kuanpeng, so they were very curious about its hiding place. How did your imperial family place the Kuanpeng? Tang Jing asked casually. In the memory I inherited, there is no special information about the Kuanpeng. It is completely free. It can go anywhere it wants. Tang Jing smiled and said, Hao Tianwang would not raise the Kuanpeng like this. Since he knows the importance of the Kuanpeng, he would naturally hold it firmly in his hands. The imperial city is so big, then where are we going to find the Kuanpeng? Xiaobai asked worriedly. Tang Zheng's gaze was deep. There were only 4 people in this trip. Other than him and Xiaobai, the 4 symbols and Azura were temporarily staying in Sumeru world. They were alone and could not make any mistakes. Tang Zheng's gaze fell on the patrolling guards in the imperial city and said thoughtfully, let's capture someone and ask. Xiaobai immediately understood Tang Zheng's thoughts and volunteered, I'll do it. The 2 of them pressed down on the cloud and quietly landed. During the day, the imperial city was heavily guarded, hundreds of times more than when they sneaked in. Obviously, after the Battle of the Suicide Valley, Hao Tianwang was jittery, afraid that the enemy would sneak into the imperial city again. But how could such a huge city wall not have any loopholes? How could it be absolutely safe? Especially in front of this kind of Xiozha who came and went, the city walls and city guards could become decorations. At this moment, Tang Zheng and Xiaobai had sneaked into the imperial city without anyone noticing. However, when they were at the imperial city gate, the 2 of them saw several corpses that were hung high up on the city gate for public display. The 2 of them had witnessed the entire process during the day. The city guards had caught a few suspicious people and declared them to be spies. Then they were immediately hung on the city gates and tortured to death. The 2 of them were really shocked by this scene. They didn't expect Hao Tianwang to be so crazy as to use this kind of torture in front of their own home, indiscriminately taking people's lives. As for spies and enemies, that was nonsense. Tang Zheng had never sent anyone to the imperial city, so how could there be any spies? This was completely because Hao Tianwang had a guilty conscience and became a frightened bird, which was why he committed such a bloody crime. At that time, Xiaobai was gnashing his teeth in hatred. These people were his people, but they were ruled by Hao Tianwang's tyranny. He understood the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders even more. Not only did he want to take back the glory and honor that belonged to the imperial family, he also wanted to save his own people from the fire and water. After the two of them sneaked into the imperial city, Xiaobai still couldn't help but look at the city gate and said in a low voice, "Master, I will definitely make Hao Tianwang pay the price. If you want to destroy them, you have to make them crazy first. This is Hao Tianwang's last carnival. The more he does this, the more unpopular he will be. Water can carry a boat, but it can also capsize a boat. If he loses the hearts of the people, how far can he go?" Tang Jing sneered and said disdainfully. Xiaobai was confused and didn't completely understand Tang Jing's meaning. Tang Jing looked at him and said earnestly, "In the future, when you become the king of sky beyond sky, you must treat your own people well." Xiaobai patted his chest and said with a matter-of-fact expression, "I am not a thug like Hao Tianwang. Naturally, I will treat my own people well." After saying this, Xiaobai's ears trembled. He raised a finger and said in a low voice, "Master, the city guards are coming." The imperial city was heavily guarded, and the city guards had increased the intensity of their patrols. Therefore they encountered the city guards as soon as they entered. Xiaobai said eagerly, "Master, wait here. I will catch them for questioning." Xiaobai didn't give Tang Jing a chance to object. In a flash, he disappeared into the night. There wasn't any big movement. After a while, Xiaobai came back with an enemy. "Master, this is their leader, a city guard. He must know a lot of information." Xiaobai clapped his hands and said. The city guard looked at Tang Jing in panic. He wanted to shout loudly, but he couldn't say a word. It was as if his throat was blocked by something. "Don't waste your energy." Xiaobai patted the city guard's shoulder. "If you move again, you will be like your subordinates and die immediately." The city guard heard this and became obedient. He looked at the two people in horror. His heart was shocked. These two people were really bold. The imperial city was heavily guarded, but they still dared to sneak in. "I ask you, where is the Kunpeng?" Time was tight, so Tang Jing asked directly. The city guard thought that the other side was going to ask about something, but it was actually about the Kunpeng. He couldn't help but open his eyes wide, not understanding what was going on. Xiaobai patted his body and removed the restriction spell. He urged, "What are you standing there for? Hurry up and answer. Don't play any tricks. You know how powerful I am." The city guard trembled and said with a bitter face, "I also don't know." Xiaobai's face hardened and said, "You dare to play tricks? You don't want to say it? Then you will have a taste of it." "Wait a minute." Xiaobai was about to make a move when Tang Jing hurriedly stopped him. "I ask you, the Kunpeng is so big. It is not inferior to the imperial city. Once it comes back, how can it disappear from under your eyes? How can you not know where it went? The Kunpeng can be big or small. Once it returns to the imperial city, it will become small. How can people like us know where it went?" The city guard said with a bitter face. "The Kunpeng can be big or small." Tang Jing frowned suspiciously. The two times he saw the Kunpeng, he only saw its huge body. He didn't think that it could become small. Tang Jing turned his head to look at Xiaobai and asked, "Is it like this in your memory?" Xiaobai shook his head firmly, "Of course not. In my memory the Kunpeng is very big. How can it become small?" Master, one look and you can tell that he is talking nonsense. Why don't you just use the soul-searching technique? You can't hide any secrets." Xiaobai's suggestion made Tang Jing's head move. At this crucial moment he couldn't make any mistakes. It seemed that he could only use the soul-searching technique. You can only blame yourself for listening to Hao Tianwang. Also, you usually do too many evil things. Tang Jing muttered in his heart. His big hand grabbed the city guard envoy's head, and a message was transmitted to his mind. "Master, how is it?" Seeing him let go of his hand, Xiaobai impatiently asked. "He is not lying." Tang Jing's face turned cold as he suspiciously said, "My new book Immortal Cultivation Master on campus has been released. It is even more interesting. Please support it. If you can't find the new book, please follow the official WeChat account, Tang Xiao. To read the latest novel, please visit the website." Chapter 1693. Xiaobai looked at Tang Jing in disbelief and asked, "He's not lying? How is that possible?" In Xiaobai's memory the Kunpeng could not freely change its size, so it was hard to accept this reality. Tang Jing thought about it and said, Maybe something happened later on that caused the Kunpeng to change. Is there really such a possibility? Xiaobai was skeptical. Tang Jing nodded with certainty. The Kunpeng is the foundation of the outer sky. Like the tree of life, it has many unpredictable characteristics, so we can't rule out this possibility. Xiaobai pouted resentfully and said, "All right. If the Kunpeng becomes smaller, the target will be smaller. It can be anywhere, so how are we going to find it?" Tang Jing looked up at the city in the sky. Last time they could reach the city in the sky from the Imperial Graveyard, but this time they might not be able to do the same. Hao Tianwang would definitely investigate the previous invasion thoroughly, but it was unknown whether he would find the transportation formation, so it was better to be careful. After listening to Tang Zheng's analysis, Xiaobai felt that it was very reasonable, but now how to find the Kunpeng was the most important thing. Tang Zheng stared at the city in the sky in the distance. The imperial city was polarized and had a strict hierarchy. The people who lived in the city in the sky were the real privileged class of the outer sky. The lives of the ordinary people were not happy, they were completely oppressed, but the power of the privileged class was too strong, so the ordinary people could not resist at all. Resistance meant death. Just like those corpses that were hung on the city gate for public display, there was no conclusive evidence at all, so the city guards could kill them if they wanted to. This was a world of difference from when the imperial family ruled the outer sky. At that time the people lived and worked, how could it be so miserable? Xiaobai also looked at the city in the sky and said, "Master, if we can't find the Kunpeng, why don't we take the initiative to attack and lure the snake out of its hole?" Tang Jing looked at Xiaobai approvingly and said, "Smart." The two of them had the same thought. They couldn't keep wasting time like this. After all, there were only the two of them. They were a small target and had high mobility. If they took the initiative to attack, they would have a way to escape. Unless Heavenly Monarch Hao personally intervened, it would not be easy to keep the two of them at the 7th and 8th grade of the Mahayana realm. The two hit it off immediately, and Tang Jing said, "Xiaobai, do you know what's supporting Sky City? Why can it float in the air?" Sky City is a floating city. As for why it can float, there's nothing special about it. It's just like the floating mountains we saw before. There are many floating mountains in outer heaven, and Sky City is just one of them. Tang Zheng was suddenly enlightened. He had thought that Sky City was supported by some kind of energy. Where is that light pillar? In addition to the function of the teleportation array, the pillar of light can also stabilize Sky City and prevent it from floating freely. The other mountains are floating indefinitely unless they are fixed by some special magic. Sky City is a symbol of Hao Tianwang's power. His rule is so cruel that it has long been angry, but everyone just doesn't dare to say anything. If Sky City is destroyed or damaged, Hao Tianwang's authority will definitely be greatly challenged and weakened, which is a good thing for us. Tang Jing thought. This time, when he came to the imperial city, Tang Jing made a special trip to investigate the specific situation of outer heaven. He found that the power and resources of outer heaven were all concentrated in the imperial city and Sky City. The other places were relatively barren, and ordinary people lived in an abyss of suffering. If he had just taken a quick look, he wouldn't have discovered this. This discovery made him feel like he had found a treasure, and he had new thoughts and gains. It turned out that Hao Tianwang's rule over outer heaven was not iron. There had been an undercurrent surging for a long time, and he was just waiting for an opportunity to break through this window paper. Xiaobai was very much in favor of Tang Zheng's plan. Although Sky City was magnificent in Xiaobai's opinion, there was a lot of corruption hidden in it, and it was better to destroy it. The two of them made up their minds and quietly sneaked toward Sky City. Along the way there was a guard every 5 steps and a sentry every 3 steps. The closer they got to Sky City, the tighter the security became, and there was a suffocating sense of oppression. "You're so scared because you have a guilty conscience." Xiaobai lowered his voice and said with gritted teeth. Although the security was tight, the cultivation of these people was far inferior to the two of them. Therefore they successfully sneaked to the bottom of Sky City, not far from the teleportation light pillar. This light pillar is protected by a formation, so it won't be so easy to destroy it. Xiaobai reminded. Formation? I know a little about it. Tang Jing was full of confidence. If it was said that his understanding of formations before was only at the beginner level, ever since he completely comprehended heavenly chess, he actually had a deeper understanding of formations by analogy. This understanding was not something that ordinary people could compare to. His current level of formations could be said to be at the Grandmaster level. It was just that he rarely used formations, so he did not show it. Heavenly chess and formations had many similarities. Heavenly chess was more complicated than formations. Heavenly chess was the principle that if one method was understood, all methods would be understood. Tang Jing used his divine sense, and his divine sense wandered. Without anyone noticing, he wandered to the light pillar. His divine sense spread underground and soon found some clues. This was indeed a large formation. The formation was connected to the entire imperial city, and it was powered by the imperial city's qi channels. The formation was powerful, and its defensive power was extremely strong. It could firmly protect the light pillar. Based on this, Hao Tianwang could sit back and relax. He was not worried about the light pillar at all. This was a formation that had been reinforced by generations of imperial family. It should have been unbreakable. If they met an ordinary cultivator, they could forget about breaking the formation without anyone noticing. Unfortunately, they met Tang Jing. He was proficient in heavenly chess, and already had a very deep foundation in formations. Furthermore, he had many unique insights and perspectives that others could not compare to. Tang Jing carefully studied this large formation, and indeed spent a lot of energy. Finally, the corners of his mouth hooked up into a smile, and he thought to himself, I finally found the trick. Watch me break the formation. His divine sense cut into the key point of the formation, and a slight power quietly changed. The city guards guarding around the light pillar did not notice it at all. The formation was broken, and the defensive power of the formation was crumbling bit by bit. Tang Jing withdrew his divine sense and glanced at Xiao Bai, who had an anxious look on his face, and said, It's a success. The formation has been broken. In just a while, this formation will completely disintegrate without anyone noticing. Then we can move. Xiao Bai's eyes were full of extraordinary splendor, and he was a little in disbelief. After all, that large formation was so powerful that he was completely helpless. But Tang Jing had done it in 3 to 5 minutes. This was too heaven-defying. Xiao Bai took a deep breath, calming the stormy waves in his heart, and said, Then let's start now. We'll destroy this light pillar and shake Sky City's foundation. Both of their eyes erupted with fanaticism, and they attacked at the same time. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.